Evolution Theory of the Hunter by Umlanpagoyawang. Read by Homebrew Audiobooks. Don't forget to subscribe for future releases. We hope you enjoy the show. Chapter 36. An Aegis Shield and a Run-of-the-Mill Longsword. Respectively, they should have been priced at $200,000 and $100,000. Even Eum Hyunjun, who rarely shows any emotion, had surprise etched on his face. Thanks to everyone's efforts, we were able to see amazing results. The only unfortunate bit of news is that the value of level 1 items have dropped to almost half their normal price, so it will be hard for me to estimate just how much we can sell them for. We're fine as long as you pay us something. Ha ha ha. Everyone still had a relatively unconcerned look at Eum Hyunjun's words. There was no one among us who didn't know the situation, and it seemed everyone was content with the results nonetheless. Above all, the most important thing was that no one had sustained any serious injury. Now we will announce the contribution rankings by teams. The rankings went as follows: Mercenary Team number 1 and our team number 2. Who really cares how everyone else ranked, right? Oh, we got second place. Of course we did. Do you know how hard I worked? Manager Kim said. If we're ranking by teams, then how are individuals going to be paid out? That will be done by the party or team head. I responded to Han Junsuk's question. Everyone swallowed with anticipation in their faces. Except Manager Kim. His smile was so big that they were almost touching his ears. Though his job is to use his skill just one time and let everyone else do the dirty work, if we were to look at the results as a whole, it was only right to give him number 2 since he was only one of 2 magicians in the whole raid group. Fourth place. Glasses Girl had her head down and was squirming. Don't be too disappointed. Someday your ability will improve even more. No, that's not it. It's because this is the first time I wasn't last place. Is that right? Yes. I'm sorry to Younggu Oppa, but I'm honestly a little happy. It's all thanks to you, party head. The way she stared up at me, she reminded me of a small puppy, so I patted her head. You did well. Keep doing what you're doing. I will. Sunba Oppa. How about me? You didn't even do anything. But I'm the team mascot. Hello? You mean giant? Smack. But it's true. Soon it was time to auction off the items. It was just formality because, as we expected, no one bought it. We were, however, able to sell it to the dungeon operating team for $200,000 for both items. It was more money than I had expected them to sell for. After this and that, our team was able to collect a total of $40,000. Holy crap. Young Soa yelled out a big whoop as she saw the $4,000 transferred into her account. I was able to collect $12,000, her money was more like pocket change compared to mine. To think that I could collect $12,000 in one raid. You could say it was because we were lucky enough to come across 2 dropped items, but this was still a lot of money. Everyone in all the other teams had ecstatic looks on their faces too. Manager Kim was all riled up saying he would make reservations at a top steakhouse and buy everyone dinner. Of course he would probably change his tune in about 10 minutes, so I hurriedly made my own reservations at a pork belly house. Eum Hyunjun walked to where I was standing. Thank you so much. We were able to complete the raid successfully without any major hiccups thanks to you. It was thanks to you, I'm certain. Honestly, I didn't walk over here to say empty compliments. I actually came here to ask a favor of you. Would you be available to join us on another raid? When did you have in mind? Within 3 days' time. So soon? If it were only a 5-person party, you could plan something as soon as the next day and move quickly. But judging from Eum Hyunjun's demeanor, it felt like he wanted to do another raid on a similar scale as the one from just today. To pull off something like this with so many people in just 3 days, that was almost preposterous. Yes. We might even move faster than that even. I would need to ask my party members, but I'm sure they would all be up for it. Great. And one more thing, Eum Hyunjun said as he lowered his voice. Can you please keep today's events a secret? Why? In one round, 2 items had dropped. This could not be coincidence. I thought it might be because of the number of people. You have a point. But if it's something as simple as that, everyone will eventually realize it too. So that's why I want to reap the benefits as many times as possible before that happens. So I'll trust that you'll keep this on the down low. Eum Hyunjun finished what he had to say and went to each party head one by one to make the same request. It seemed as if everyone agreed to it. We again embarked on the Beksapyeong dungeon with the mercenary guild every 3 days. In 1 month of doing this, we were able to come up with a total of 15 dropped items. On average, that was about 1.5 items for every time we did a raid. That was a lot of money in the course of a month. We were able to deduce certain things while doing our raids and taking stock of the different item drops. Item drop was proportionate to the number of hunters entering a dungeon. The type of item dropped depends on the hunter's equipment and skill level. The lower the hunter's level compared to the dungeon's level, the higher the probability of an item drop. There was no way this would remain a secret for long. We don't know if someone leaked it or if other people figured it out on their own, but the number of level 1 items put up on the hunter market went up like crazy. Why are there so many level 1 items at the market all of a sudden? And they're all super cheap now too. Is this all stuff from level 1 hunters who can't go to level 2 dungeons? This is something I heard from someone, but there have been a whole lot of level 1 item drops recently. There's more new level 1 items on the market now than used items. Do you think this has anything to do with the level 1 dungeons disappearing? Why doesn't any of it drop for my team? We went about 10 times but nada. What the? Do you think the dungeons are favoring some people and not others? Tisk tisk. There are still people who don't know the secret to this? Please share what you know. Just wait. Let us milk it a bit more first. After checking the forums a bit, I closed the window. Man, whoever that is sucks. I mean, we were asked to keep it on the down low and I guess he's sort of doing that. But why the hell would he even hint at a possible tip like that? I'm sure whoever it is also going on separate raids to milk it for all it was worth. Shameless. But good thing we went on all those raids first. It was a smart move. Because soon, the special condition we had where parties in excess of 10 people had free admission, was not just limited to the mercenary guild anymore. It was now available to the general public. It wasn't long before level 1 items were less than half their normal value. It didn't look like it would go back up anytime soon. I closed my left eye and checked my stats. 0, 15, 3,350. Over the last month, I had accumulated over 10,000 reward points. With that, I split it up to raise all of my abilities. I'm a well-rounded boy, don't you know? That was why I only had about 3,000 left now. Strength, endurance, reflexes, focus, defense. I had raised all of them one time for a total of 7,500 reward points. With this much, it would now be possible to take my party members into a level 2 dungeon all on my own now. I felt like if I took into account Yung Soa's buffer skill, I might even be able to kill a level 2 monster with my bare hands. What was even better was that everyone on my team had a low-level average, so we would have higher chances for item drops. Hyunjun seemed very disappointed that we chose to leave his team. But the level 1 items were quickly dropping in value by each passing day, and now I was strong enough to clear a level 2 dungeon all on my own that there seemed little point in me sticking with that team any longer. I'm a bit sad that today will be your last day. I wish you guys only the best of luck. Honestly, I was a bit sad too. I felt like there was still a lot I could learn from Hyunjun. The raids were now moving forward just as fast as they had been the last month. No, it was actually now moving even faster. I felt a bit worried and said, "Partyhead, aren't the raids moving a bit too fast lately? Is there a problem?" No, not really a problem, just, I couldn't really tell him that if he cleared the raids too quickly that an irregular might appear. Because it wasn't a 5-person party. Maybe I was making a big deal out of nothing. But I couldn't stop from still feeling a bit iffy. And soon my worries were affirmed. What is that? Was there a monster like that? Partyhead? Everyone was staring at a humongous monster in the distance. Sunbahapa? Yung Soa's voice was rattling almost violently. It was the monster that I had once slain long ago. The level 4 monster was standing in the distance. Chapter 37. Everyone stand back. Hyunjun said quietly. The monster was at the base of a hill, wandering around about 200 meters away. It seemed as if it hadn't noticed us just yet. I couldn't understand what he was up to. Just from looking at the monster, I knew it was impossible for our group to go up against it and win. I went up to Hyunjun and whispered, "That's a level 4 monster." I figured that much. It would be too much to try to kill it with our party. I think it would be best to fall back for the time being. That was what I had in mind too, but he had a sort of disappointed look on his face. There were no items dropped this round, and we weren't able to collect many ores either. But we couldn't really call it a loss since we were able to gain a lot from our little secret knowledge over the past month. When it came down to it, it was better to miss out on today's earnings than to lose a life. The cons greatly outweigh the pros of going up against a beast like that. When I came right out and said it, Hyunjun finally nodded his head. He waved his arms to get everyone's attention. "We'll call it a day and turn around early. It is unfortunate, but this is for your safety, so I hope you all understand. Why don't we try and fight it? Come on. That guy looks crazy strong. What are you saying? But we did good up until today. And we have over 30 people here. Isn't that something?" The party head has already made his decision. It's better to follow what he says. So you really want to drop out without anything to show for it? What do you mean show for it? We milked this cow for all it was worth this past month. We could afford to lose out on one raid. Don't be ignorant. You need to milk every opportunity. And the comments went on in this manner. I wasn't surprised the conversation went this way since all our raids had been so easy thus far. Everyone was now full of confidence. Almost too full. I guess it's not an easy thing to objectively assess your own skill when things get too easy. Hyunjun interjected. It's a level 4 monster. It is impossible to go up against something like that with this alone. Level 4? Why is something like that here? It's an irregular. Everyone shut up. All the resistance seemed to disappear in an instant at that one word. The only thing that could be heard was the rustling of the weeds underfoot, nothing else. That was when everyone started heading toward the exit of the dungeon one by one. Something felt off. I started counting the people leaving the dungeon and the people still left. 30. We were missing someone. Wait, what's wrong? Hyunjun asked. Someone is missing. What? How can that? There is only 30 of us. It seems someone left the group at one point. There's no way that we wouldn't have known if he left during a fight. They probably slipped out just recently. It most likely happened when everyone was worried over the irregular. We wouldn't have noticed if they slipped back into the dungeon while we were preparing to leave. Who would? That helmet guy, Glasses Girl said. When I turned to look at her, she said with more conviction. That man with the motorcycle helmet isn't here. I thought it was weird, but I didn't think it was my place to say. That's stupid. Hyunjun started cursing. Why? Do you remember something? That man's brother died in that last incident when the same looking monster had shown up in the city. They were both in the same party at the time, but he was the only one who made it out alive. Surely he doesn't mean to go face that beast alone? It's not even the same monster. That's why I wasn't really concerned. It was my mistake. I should have been prepared something like this would happen. There's no point in blaming yourself now. We need to hurry up and bring him back. GRAAWRD. Crash. My whole body vibrated. Hyunjun and I immediately locked eyes. It's him. I'll go get him. Hyunjun hurriedly turned to try and run toward the sound. I grabbed a hold of his arm. Wait just a moment. I'll go. What? It's only right that I should go. Your responsibility as the party head should be to lead everyone out of here safely and quickly. But this is my burden. The person with the strongest ability in this entire team is me. But, do you really want to waste time we already don't have? Then I'll entrust this to you. I nodded, turned around, and said. Manager Kim, please take care of our team members. I don't think it's right. What is? You going this time? It's an irregular, but that one's different. It's not just a boss. If you go, you'll die. I'm sure. You might be right, but you're still going to go? Compared to the risk, the reward could be amazing. What do you mean reward? What reward is there in fighting such a monster? I left Manager Kim standing with a puzzled expression and walked to Young Soa. I'll ask you just one thing. Can you please go with me? Okay. You don't want to ask me why? Do I need to know? I mean, no, I guess not. She wouldn't be in any danger. I gave her a great big hug. Woohoo. You're being too loud. You're really fast though. How on earth can you run so fast? It's not even all that amazing. It wasn't. Of course, thanks to the effort skill, I was able to improve my abilities tremendously. Something like this could be easily replicated by a special skill or equipment. High-level hunters being able to move with almost inhuman speed is all thanks to the aid of their equipment. If you looked at it that way, my ability was probably now at the same level as a level 3 equipment. But do you have a plan on how you're going to kill the level 4 monster? I was thinking of borrowing a bit of your skill. Oh, that? In the case of a particular skill, when proficiency increases, their ability either increases in accuracy or they could even gain a new ability. In Young Soa's case, when her proficiency clocked in at 10, it produced the latter. She could now pool her entire buffer ability and give it to just one person. But if I use it one time, I can't use it for an entire day. If we kill that thing, then we're done for the day, so don't worry about it. Young Soa's one-person buffer gave one person a 50% boost in their abilities for 10 minutes. Unlike the buffer given to 5 people in a party, this one had a much longer cool time. But the 50% increase was worth it. It was especially worth it in circumstances such as this where I would have to go against a monster that is way above my level. This buffer could put me at enough of an advantage where I would have a fighting chance. On top of that, the skill was not adding to my current ability, but multiplying it. If a person's normal strength was at 200%, then instead of it being just 250%, it would be boosted to 300%. If that was the case, why couldn't we have done this in the first place? We would have been able to get help from everyone else too. Then we would also have to do the contribution split with everyone. Come on. Use your head. What would be split? Item. How can you be sure it's going to drop an item? Well, it's not really a definite thing. But the probability is very high. All the irregulars that had shown up, in my experience, have dropped an item. The first and second ones both dropped a level 0 skillbook. The third one dropped the escape scrolls. So it was only reasonable to think that this one would drop something too. And this one was high level. I was almost positive it would drop something really cool. Oh, I'm starting to get excited. We don't know yet though. It might be smart to not even start a fight with it. We aren't even fully prepared. But you don't think it's going to be too dangerous, right? Well, if it gets too tough, there's always the escape scroll. I'm not stupid to think of running in blind without a backup plan. I was only doing this because I had a sort of insurance. This was also a great chance for me to rack up more reward points if possible. This one used its strength and its long reach to its advantage. But it lacked in agility. This meant I would have enough time to run away if need be. The monster was jumping about as if it were crazed. Right in front of it, the helmet-wearing hunter was trying to fight the beast with just one sword. He looked and moved as if he was already running out of energy. I don't know when they started fighting, but I thank the Lord he was able to stay alive at least this long. The monster struck out with its long arm and helmet guy rolled out of the way. The monster struck out its arm one more time, clawing a fist full of dirt into the air, and helmet guy rolled out of the way once more. It looked like he was doing a good job of dodging, but who knows? The monster might just be playing around with him. If the monster really wanted to kill him, helmet guy probably would have been long dead. Nonetheless, it was a relief he was alive. I let Young Soa down in a safe spot and ran toward the monster. Soa, stay ready. Okay. Helmet guy and the monster turned in my direction at the same time. I could hear that helmet guy was saying something, but I didn't hear clearly enough to know what. Graar, the monster yelled out loud. Tap, tap, tap. In just 3 steps, I ran in between the monster and helmet guy. The beast swung out its long arm. What? It couldn't think of any other move? Its long reach was definitely its strength, but it was also a weakness. The longer the reach, the weaker it was in close combat. I ran head-on to close the gap and swung out my longsword. But I couldn't even make a dent in its hard leathery skin. Well, it was a level 1 weapon. I immediately swung out with my bloodsword. This didn't work either. I guess the bloody sword couldn't do its job right since it didn't have any blood to increase its piercing power. Watch out. I heard helmet guy yell behind me. I made a backstep and created distance with the monster. Tap. This time it swung out its leg at the area I had been in just a second before. Its big body made it easy for me to see every one of its movements. Take this. I pulled out 1 page of the escape scrolls and handed it over to helmet guy. I needed him to leave so that I could properly concentrate on the fight. What's this? It's going to take you out of the dungeon. As soon as you rip it, it'll transport you out. I need to kill that bastard. You know that's impossible. I grabbed helmet guy and tumbled away. The monster's claw just grazed by us. I didn't feel like arguing with him. I came here just for you. Hyunjun wanted to come, but I was able to just barely talk him out of it. Who else do you want to come and risk their life? I won't live long anyway. What? Helmet guy raised his sword and dashed toward the monster once more. Chapter 38. There was no reason for me to keep trying to persuade him to do otherwise. Chop. Kook. I made a chop to the back of his neck. I guess I didn't properly control my strength because I heard a small sound, but it was fine, he didn't die. I tossed his unconscious body gently to the side and drew my sword. As soon as I raised my hand up, Young Soa made an OK sign in return. A bright light came down over my head. Beep. 10 o'clock. The 10-minute timer had been set. I kicked back on the ground and ran. Reflex 225%. I just needed 1 second running in top speed. The monster's body came almost to my nose. Graar. Its strength was its sheer power, its reach, but also its defense. The longsword and bloody sword were not enough to pierce this bastard's skin. Its weakness? I used the momentum of my run to climb up its body. I could feel the 300% in strength boosting my legs to run so fast it felt like I was flying. I swung my sword straight into its neck to lever myself up onto its shoulder. From there I jumped up and stabbed it in the eye. KRAWWWWR. So close. But I didn't put enough force behind that attack to pierce it. I jumped off the monster and jabbed at it with my longsword. It yelled out once more and stepped back. I rolled my shoulder a bit and moved to the side. This time the monster raised both its arms to try and slam them down on top of me. Should I rush in? I'm rushing in. It slammed down both arms. I barely missed being crushed, but the ground shook, and I shook with it. A big plume of dust rose into the air, and I could see its head poking out from within the brown cloud. Ha! I jammed my sword into its head. It felt as if my spine were about to snap. I could see its claw rushing toward me. I couldn't miss this chance. I watched the path of the claw and stepped forward. The sharp claw just barely missed my ear. Everything was dim because of the dust that was still in the air. But that was the same for the beast. I kept slamming at the monster again and again as if I were chopping wood with an axe. The monster finally seemed to crumble. But another claw came flying at me. This time as I moved out of the way, I stabbed upward with my sword. Krwaww. The monster hollered. It wasn't able to follow my quick movements, especially with all this dust. I kept at it. Though I still wasn't able to pierce its tough skin, it could still feel the blunt trauma I was delivering with each blow. I needed to sap it of all its strength. Then when it couldn't move well anymore, I would stab at its eye again. The dust clouds finally settled. Krrr. Sunbahopa is the best. During the time I stepped back to catch my breath, I heard Yung Soa yelling out loud. I made a small smirk and ran at the monster once more. Again the sharp claw. I dodged left, right. 2 times, before I moved to the side. An opening. I slammed my sword into it again, and it seemed to be ready to topple over me. I made 2 more quick blows before stepping back. Slam. It finally collapsed to its knees. 9:31. Only 31 seconds had passed. I still had a lot of time left to keep dealing it damage. Asterisk. 151. Phew. Krrr. I bowed my shoulders to try and catch my breath. 8 minutes had passed. The monster looked just about worn out now too. I had been dealing the blows this whole time, but it was still not down. I was able to truly appreciate the ferociousness of a level 4 monster. But I would be victorious. I ran behind it. The monster slammed the ground where I had been, but the force behind it was much weaker than when we had first started out. I slammed another blow and it flinched, but wasn't able to dodge. It was too big to be able to evade any of my blows. So I continued to deal him blow after blow all over its body in this manner. And finally, it began to throw up blood. The blood that was spurting out splattered onto the blade of my bloody sword. Slice. This time, I was able to make a slight cut. It wasn't a big one, but it was enough. I jammed my bloody sword into that opening. Krawwwr. It yelled out viciously and rolled around. Now that the bloody sword was lodged into its body, its time was ticking. But then again, time was almost up for me too. The timer was telling me I had 8 seconds left. I ran toward the monster and jumped up high. Falling from the air was a dangerous move, because there was no way for me to dodge any oncoming attacks. For this reason, I was trying to use the element of surprise by attacking quickly. This was my chance to stab it in the eye. It swung out with its claw. Did it still have energy to fight back? Smack. Aw, shit. Slam. Hit by its attack, I flew about 10 meters in the air and fell to the ground. Hard. Kook. I can smell blood from inside my mouth. My stomach felt queasy, but I could still move. Thank the Lord for my armor. 0-100, beep beep. Slam. At the same time the timer went off, the monster made a giant noise as it collapsed. My longsword was sticking out of its eye. Right before I was hit, I was able to succeed in connecting my sword with its eye. Phew. Krrr. Seeing as it was still alive, it was a sturdy one. Under usual circumstances, I would immediately run up and slice its throat or twist the sword in its eye. Because a monster had amazing healing abilities. But I didn't need to in this case. My bloody sword was lodged into its body, sapping away its life source. The more I thought about it, the more I took a liking to that weapon. It was pretty great. Though its attack power was a bit lacking, it made up for it in other ways such as this. I could hear Helmet Guy starting to wake up behind me. Great for him. Waking up after all the good stuff is over. Are you awake? Kook. What the hell did you? If you want to commit suicide, just jump off a bridge. Don't you know it's an awful nuisance doing something like that in a dungeon? What the hell do you care? Anyway, what about the monster? I took care of it. What? He looked to where I was pointing. The monster was collapsed face down and taking its last breath. Did it die? Almost. That's good. He drew his sword and started walking toward the monster. I stood in front of him and blocked his path. Move. I need to kill it. I can't let you do that. Why is that? I was the one who took care of this monster. If it happens to drop an item, then there could be a conflict in who claims ownership. Whatever comes out, I'll give it to you. Some move. I said I can't let you do that. If he kills it, then all my reward points would fly right out the window. I said move. Helmet guy pointed his sword at me. I didn't respond. Why the hell are you blocking my way? I have my own reasons. This is my brother's revenge. What bigger reason can you have than that? That's my business. Kook, his sword began to quiver. Tap. He ultimately dropped his sword and fell down to his knees in front of me. I could hear a thick voice coming out from his helmet. Would you listen to my story a bit? No. Take this, rip it, and get out of here. I handed over the escapee scroll to him. ***+ 400. I sent Helmet Guy out and got my reward points after about 10 minutes. It was a pretty crappy amount compared to the 10 minutes of hell I went through. I felt kind of ripped off since it was way more than twice as strong as a wolf boss, while only giving me double the reward points. You know that no matter what drops, I get a piece of it too, right? I know. I'll pay you with money. I don't need money. I already have a lot from what you paid me this past month. Then, buy me dinner. Something expensive. Something like that is easy. It wasn't hard to do. And no matter how expensive dinner was, how much could it really be? To think that she would be fine with just that. Good for me. If it wasn't for her buffer, I would have had a real tough time against this monster. I was planning on giving her at least 10%. If it was just ores, then it wouldn't have been much. But if it was an item, she could have made somewhere upwards of several thousand to several tens of thousands of dollars. You promise? I promise. And we can take this opportunity to even invite all of the party members so I can buy something real expensive. Aw, really? Are you that slow? What do you mean? Whatever. It's nothing. I couldn't figure out why, but it seemed like she was really pissed off. Oh well. It took a long time for the monster to evaporate. Was it because it was a level 4 monster? After a good and long time, it was finally done. It probably took close to 20 minutes. Tap. Huh? It's a book? Is it a skill book? I grabbed the book that had fallen to the ground. It wasn't a skill book. Chapter 39. There were 2 ways to identify a skill book. The number that denotes the level of the skill, and a subtle light that glows out of it. The book in my hand had neither of those. In big lettering, there was written, How to Use Combos. On flipping to the first page, there was a drawing of 2 weapons and 3 ores. How to use combos. What's that? It looks like instructions on how to combine 2 weapons. What am I supposed to do with this? According to the instructions, you would take 2 weapons and 3 monazites, combine them to create a random named item. A named item was referring to an item that already had a known name to it, like the bloody sword. To give you another example, the longsword I got from Park Jungba as a no name, meaning, it didn't have a known name attached to it, it was a generic no brand. Nothing really special, but a named item is different. Just like the bloody sword, a named item usually had a special option attached to it. Depending on the type of option attached to a named item, the value of it can change proportionately. So I think it would make sense that investing in more valuable ores for the combos would result in a better quality weapon. Do you think this really works? I mean, why wouldn't it? It wouldn't come out of an irregular if it didn't work. The level 0 skill book and the escape scroll both were items that never appeared in the regular system of raids. I carefully went through the entire book. I needed to carefully estimate just how valuable this book was. The calculator in my head started tallying. The level 1 weapons were currently selling for $50,000. It used to cost about $100,000, but they were listing for half their original price these days. It'll probably fall even more to about $20,000–$30,000 very soon. I was going to wait until it falls as far as it can so that I can buy 2 and run some experiments. It's weird. What is? Just because something is a named item doesn't mean it holds double the value of a regular weapon. Of course, if you're lucky, you might chance on a named item that is several times the value of a regular weapon. But that's a big if. You're usually lucky if the named item is double the value of a regular item because it's usually less than that. Just because we can combine 2 weapons into a named item doesn't mean scraping up the money to do it is going to be any easy task. Plus, we needed to take into consideration the cost of the ores as well. Monazites usually ran for 1,000 each. Unfortunately, with the level 1 dungeons disappearing, the price for these had also gone up significantly. They could not easily sell for 1,500 each. If I were to invest in 3 monazites and 2 weapons, that would cost me upwards of $60,000. Would a level 1 named item that results from the combo exceed the $60,000 I invest? That is hard, right? I flipped to the next page. This time it was instructions on combining armor. It was the same thing as with the weapon, but the type of ore was different. It was a bastnazite. The next page instructed on how to change the option of a named item. The only requirements were 3 ores. This one might be useful. Keep flipping. What if there's something that will raise the level of a weapon? Hold your horses. That's what I'm looking for too. Flip. They were all similar with just variations in ores in combinations until I flipped to the last chapter. Finally, I came to what I was looking for. 2 level 1 weapons and 3 BLI solites. Isn't that a pretty expensive ore? It's also super radioactive, and it's rare. It's probably selling for $3,000, so if I have to buy 3, that's $9,000. But if you think of it as raising the level of your equipment, it's not too shabby. The problem is, where in the world am I going to buy a BL isolite? Rare ores were sold by the government. This was because high-tech machines were used in extracting the useful elements of the ore. If we didn't have such technology, mankind would probably collapse. I guess we have no choice but to get them from the dungeons ourselves. It looks like we'll be on a hunt for ores I didn't even give half a thought to in my life. All you need for items is money. But something rare, it's easier to get it from the source if we can. If it meant a level up, buying 2 level 1 named items might not be a bad investment. Because if it was a named plus named item, the results would most likely be a level 2 named item. That would definitely be worth it. It kind of sucks that there's only one way to combo and upgrade to level 2. That was the last page with any writing on it. The rest of the pages were all blank. What I really needed right now was not a level 2 item but a level 3 item. I was able to realize this after my fight with the level 4 monster. Of course, I still felt confident I would win if I faced the same monster again. But the number one priority in any raid was safety. I couldn't keep putting myself in unnecessary danger every time I went into a dungeon. For that reason, it was always better to constantly try and acquire higher level equipment. No, it was important. But even if a level 3 item was a no-named item, the cheapest one ran for over $500,000. If it was a named item, the starting price was $1 million. In the case of Kim Youngchul, who had the Athena's bow, though it was a level 4 weapon, it ran for $2 million. If you thought about an item's price, purchasing it by saving up from dungeon raid earnings was almost impossible. It would take forever to go from one level to another without being from a rich family. But then again, there's no reason to rush things. With your current skills, Sunba Opa, you could probably clear level 2 dungeons in profit with about $30,000 in a month. In just 1 year, that would be about $400,000, so buying level 3 equipment would only be a matter of 3 years. And $30,000 in a month is honestly me being conservative. If you go on raids every 3 days, you could earn double that. You know that hunting in dungeons isn't that simple. If you were injured or an irregular appeared, then that would complicate things. Especially recently. On top of that, I have a feeling we can't stay complacent. Why? Who knows if and when the level 2 dungeons will disappear too? Nobody knew why the level 1 dungeons had disappeared. Sure, there were theories. But no hard facts. I felt like this was only the beginning of things. I could almost say with certainty that it had something to do with the level 0 skillbooks. But I didn't know for a fact if this was something only appearing for me or for a select few others too. Either way, there was no guarantee that this was the end of it. Now that things had come to this, there was nothing to do but keep climbing up. As soon as we exited the dungeon, Eam Hyunjun and everyone else was on standby waiting for us. I didn't see Helmet Guy. What happened to that guy? He received some treatment from the ward here, and I sent him home afterward. He didn't have any big injuries other than to his neck. But it's a relief that that was the extent of it. I thought I heard a weird sound. I'll do the contribution split and send it to your account. I added in Jong Sawan's share as well. Jong Sawan? The helmet man's name is Jong Sawan. Did he say anything else? Not really. He just seemed terribly stricken. But he didn't say anything outside of that. Why? Did something happen? Not really. There was no point in telling him anything and make things weird. And if Helmet Guy had any conscience, he wouldn't come to me for the hospital bill either. Han Junsok, Cho Younggu, and manager Kim came this way. You killed it? What do you mean? I'm sure you wouldn't just run in there not to try and kill the monster. My intuition is stellar. Anyway, if you were that curious, you should have followed me in. Well, about that. I had something I had to tend to. Like you asked, I had to take the party members safely outside. You know how much they want to always follow you. Especially that one. Glasses girl started tearing up after looking up at me. What? This girl? Han Junsok said. Ms. Bai Yongyong was very worried. I kept telling her nothing bad was going to happen, but she wouldn't believe me. Ha. It's a relief that you came back safely, sniff. I don't know how to comfort a crying girl. Would she feel better if I hug her head? Hug. Ah. Thanks for worrying about me. What? Next time please take me too. And don't just take Unnie. Tien. Unnie is Korean for older sister, used for older females by younger females. After saying this, she bowed her head down. I could see that her face flushed a bright red color. You people, am I invisible? Young Soa yelled out annoyed. You came back too, huh? It's great that you came back safely. Clap clap clap. Congratulations. Manager Kim. Younggu Ajushi. Are you guys really going to be like this? You should be a bit more like Junsok Oppa. Tien. Oppa is Korean for older brother and Ajushi is Korean for old man. Why do you call him Oppa and me Ajushi? Because Junsok Oppa's good looking, that's why. Kya. Slam. When Cho Younggu ran toward Soa, he was on the floor in seconds. I used to learn Judo. Wasn't it shot put? I asked. That too. I'm asking you with the utmost seriousness right now. Do you want to take this chance to use real equipment and be a hunter? Will you be coaching me? I don't think you'd need me to. If you're going to train me every day, then I'll do it. Well, I guess I could. I was being really serious. In cases where we would need her buffer skill, it would be tricky if she had no way of defending herself. I'll do it too, Glasses Girl said. I nodded my head. I didn't mind putting in the work if it means raising up the ability of my team members. Chapter 40. We decided to do our training at the usual park. Since it was the day after we had our normal after-hunt drinking, no one looked like they were in the best condition. But I didn't care. Since this was our first day of training, I wanted to put 1000% into it. Do it right. Do I really have to do this? Well, if you're never going to fight, then I guess not. You can just buy a level 1 armor and walk around with that on. With the right kind of armor, you can get hit a couple of times and still live, probably. I said casually towards Young Soa, who was chopping up and down repeatedly with her sword. She's been doing this same motion for the last 2 hours. This was the basics. She needed to learn proper form. Whenever she made the slightest mistake in her form, I lightly hit her with the hilt of my sword at her arms or legs to have her correct it. It shouldn't have hurt her at all. It should have just made her feel kind of crappy. Like when someone slides their hand across your face slowly. It hurts much less than a slap, but it somehow makes you feel worse. But this was enough to have her correct her posture. This isn't right. Oh well, I mean, if my posture is wrong like this, shouldn't you help me into the right posture with your hands or something? Right? Go behind me, and if you do it like that, isn't it much better? Tap. Ow. Look at you hitting me again. No gutter mind while training. I did say this, but she was very quick at learning. Maybe it was because she was an athlete. But it was more important to fully ingrain the basics once you've learned it. And she was really taking this tedious work like a champ. She had the right mindset, for the most part. Pluck. Swing. It veered off course again. On the opposite side, Glasses Girl was aiming her bow and arrow at a makeshift target I had put up for her. It was a practice arrow, so it didn't have a sharp end. Since it was a park, you couldn't be too sure that she might accidentally hit an innocent person just strolling through. Her skill was as crappy as ever. It wasn't like my archery skills were the best, but if her skills were worse than mine, ones I acquired from just taking up archery as a hobby during my college years, that was really bad. You said you never took any formal lessons for archery, right? Yes. Why did you decide to take up archery then? I got this bow from my older brother. Older brother? Yes. He was a hunter, but he retired because of an injury. He just rests at home for the time being. A retired hunter. Seems like it must be a burden to you. Yes. That's why I'm so thankful to you. How about your parents? My father is also a retired hunter. Was she saying that she's the sole provider and support for her crumbling household? Something sounded not right. If your father and your brother were once hunters, how come you never learned archery properly from them? They were both put out of commission from being hunters due to injury, so I think they're worried the same would happen to me. But because the only income is coming from me right now, it's not as if I don't completely understand her family's worry. But just because they were worried didn't mean they shouldn't have given her lessons. In this type of situation, the best solution should have been to give her the tools necessary to reduce her risk of injury, since she were going to be a hunter no matter what. It seems you have your own issues. I'm sorry about that. But that aside, it seems like you haven't been able to focus for a while now. I don't know what you're thinking about, but, at this level, you are almost no help to the team at all. It's only because of Soa's buffer skill that you were able to hit your marks. Know that I can only help you so much. Now that we plan on going full force in climbing each level one by one, if you can't keep up, I'll have no choice but to drop you from the team. Okay. Glasses Girl nodded her head as she grasped her bow tight. Her heart was in the right place. No, I could see it in her eyes that she understood. But we'll see if her will reflect in her archery. Pluck. Wing. As I continued standing by while the two resumed their training, I looked through the How to Combo book again. Since I just browsed through it yesterday, I was planning on looking at it in more detail. I felt like I had overlooked something. But what bothered me the most was that almost half the book was blank. Since only the first half the book had drawing and instructions in it, why was the rest of it blank? This was a special item. There was no way that there wasn't a reason behind it being blank. Flip. First, I looked over the blank pages again. I did look at it yesterday, but you never knew if it changed overnight. Maybe there was something I didn't catch before. Tap. I found it. On the corner of one blank page, there was a very small drawing. That small drawing was of a sword that was an almost exact replica of the bloody sword. But it wasn't just that. Under the bloody sword were drawings of 2 daggers and 3 bli solites. The meaning of this drawing was obvious. You can make a bloody sword by combining 2 daggers. I pretty much knew the specs of all the items offered up on the hunter market. Level, price, performance, options, you could say I memorized it all. Put bluntly, I'm sure there's no one else who had as much knowledge of all the items on the market as me. This was due to memorizing and learning about all the items on the market during my years as a porter, when my only dream was to someday become a hunter. The 2 daggers pictured under the bloody sword were both level 1 weapons. One was a vampiric dagger and the other was a speed-enhancing dagger. Each used to be valued at about $150,000. But they were probably selling for $60,000 now. Phew, my heart was beating fast. This book not only told you how to combine items to get you a random item, but it also showed you how to get a specific item. This meant that I would know if investments made in the separate items will be worth the resulting item. More specifically, if I just had 3 bli solites, which would cost me $120,000, then I would be able to produce a $400,000 bloody sword. That was $280,000 profit. Wait, I hurriedly flipped to the next page. And I found it. Athena's bow. Somewhere in the middle of the combo book was a small drawing of Athena's bow. This was a bow that had the option of not hurting humans. I need to remain calm. What was needed to create Athena's bow were the following: a level 3 Valladolid bow and a level 2 White Crow pendant. They were, respectively, $800,000 and $500,000. To be able to create a $2 million items at the cost of $1.3 million. That was $700,000 in profit. Of course, there would also be ores involved in this combo too. The required ore to create this level 4 weapon was elnite. This was something that sold for over $10,000 each, and it was as rare as it was expensive. But as you go up in dungeon levels, the ores that drop also increase in levels. This type of ore would drop occasionally in level 3 dungeons. Bloody sword and Athena's bow. There was one thing these two items had in common. They were both weapons that I had used at least once before. Of course, the bloody sword is something I use almost every day, but I had used the Athena's bow only once before when I was trying to catch the attention of a monster. This meant that every weapon I use will appear in this book. And it will show me what I can do to create it. The only thing that was a disappointment was that I had never used a level 3 weapon. Soa, what? Do you know of any level 3 hunters by any chance? I do, but none that I keep in touch with. They kept asking me out every day, and I got sick of it. Don't lie. You don't know because I never put makeup on around you, but I'm quite a looker if I try. Anyway, my fault for even asking. I needed to borrow a level 3 weapon. But there was no one who would let me borrow such an expensive weapon. If only I had a rich friend. Rich friend? Kim Youngchul's face immediately come to the forefront of my mind. Since he was such a nice kid, he might actually listen to my request. But since I haven't heard a peep from him since that day, he might have quit raids altogether. And it was kinda bad manners to ask for such a big favor out of the blue. Okay, toss that out the window. If I just created a couple bloody swords and sold them, I would have enough money to buy a level 3 weapon myself in no time. There's no such thing as a free favor. I needed to stop trying to take unnecessary shortcuts. My primary goal was to clear level 2 dungeons. 0, 15, 3850. I closed my eye to check my reward points. My current abilities were Strength 200, Endurance 150, Reflex 150, Focus 150, and Defense 100. If I used Young Soa's buffer, that would increase all of them even more. Her buffer skill would raise each ability by about 20%, and the option that she could only use once a day for 10 minutes would raise each ability by about 50%. With this, it was more than enough to clear a level 2 dungeon. I thought about how I should use the remaining reward points and decided on increasing my stamina and defense. The reason why I had decided on the 2 was because I was lacking in these 2 areas the most during my fight with the level 4 monster. If I were just running, then I could keep it up for 2 hours. But 10 minutes into a full-on fight, that was enough to wear me out. This was because fighting a monster much bigger than me required me to run around, dodge, and jump a lot. And then getting hit that one time was enough to almost take me out of the fight. Luckily the fight was done by that time. But this meant I needed to have better defense. 17,350. Raising my stamina from 150 to 200 cost me 2,000 points, and raising my defense from 100 to 150 cost me 1,500 points. So in total, I spent 3,500 points to raise those 2 abilities. Huff, huff. I collapsed onto the ground and tried to catch my breath. I spent 1 hour being Young Soa's personal sandbag and the next 2 hours running around the park. But I didn't mind. Improving myself like this didn't cost me a dime. Mr. Jaeon Sangmin? A voice interrupted my thoughts. It was a familiar voice. Who was it? Chapter 41. Deep scars, muscular physique, and an all too familiar voice. It was a face I've never seen before, but I knew who it was. I got up from the ground as I said. How did you find me here? Mr. Jong Sawan. Tien. Jong Sawan is Helmet Guy, in case you guys don't remember. So you recognized me. Well, I never knew your face since you always had that helmet on, but I could tell by your voice. Ah, is this man Helmet Man? Didn't he go to the hospital ward? I was able to check out fairly quickly. I just had a basic physical done to make sure there was nothing seriously wrong. That's a relief. That you weren't seriously injured. So why did you come find me? If you came to ask me to pay for your hospital bills or to fight me in the name of your brother, I don't have time for any of that, I'll tell you right now. That isn't why I'm here. Then, my overall impression of Helmet Guy wasn't bad at all. When I had first met him and Eum Hyunjun at Baekwanza Dungeon, we had good fighting chemistry. I thought we got along fairly well. He didn't have a bad personality either. It was just that one incident with the irregular that left a bad taste. Can I join your party, please? What? That was not what I was expecting. And it wasn't an appealing offer to me either. Maybe he read that in my expression because then he said, there will not be a repeat of the incident from the last time. How am I supposed to trust that? And I think you mentioned this at that last incident. That you didn't have long to live. Do you have some kind of illness or something? Terminal cancer. I have about 6 months left. If I undergo treatment, they said that I can extend it a bit more, but that's not a route I want to take. Thank you for being honest, but, is he saying that since he's dying anyway, he'd rather do it while killing a monster? That kind of an attitude is not at all helpful in a party. Why? Because a person on the cusp of death is selfish. Even if they were the more giving and altruistic person in the world, when death is at their front step, all they can think about is themselves. If I allow that type of person into my party and something happens, it would only hurt us. Why don't you go and ask Eum Hyunjun? Aren't you on better terms with him? I came to you after already being rejected by him. It's probably for the same reason you are thinking right now. If you just came to me as a last resort, then I can only give you the same answer. In one way, you had to respect the guy for his brutal honesty. Schwing tilde Jong Sawan drew his sword. Young Soa and Glasses Girl stepped back and stared at him with wary looks. I raised my hand to calm them before taking the sword he was now handing over to me. I've seen this before. This is a level 3 Rubicon sword. From what I can remember, this has a value of $700,000. But how did you? I purchased it with the money from my brother's life insurance and from selling the house. So he was trusting in this sword when he went to fight the level 4 monster. Since he only had a level 1 sword when I had first met him, he must have purchased this in between that time. A level 3 weapon. If I said I didn't feel a bit of sway from this new turn of events, I would be lying. And this man would be dying soon. Since he sold his house and used the entirety of his brother's insurance money on this sword, that meant he probably didn't have any family left. That meant if he died, then the probability of this sword coming into my possession was very high. When I realized that the direction of my thoughts flowed so easily in that sequence, I instantly started hating myself for it. How could I be so calculating with a man who was on his way to his deathbed? But this was a level 3 weapon. Even if I didn't inherit it later down the road, getting it to appear in my item fusion book would still be a great asset. The only thing I had to do was include him in my party. TN. I changed the name of the How to Combo book to Item Fusion book. What to do? It wasn't a bad choice no matter what I decided to do. All of a sudden, Zhang Sawan dropped to his knees in front of me. What are you doing? I really hate this kind of thing. Please get up. I'll promise you one thing if you just accept me into your party. I will always listen to any order you make. Though I can only ask you to trust me when I say this. I only need one chance. I can't understand why you are going so far as to beg me like this. If you have a level 3 weapon, can't you just make your own party? I don't think I could create a party that is capable enough to kill that level of monster. Okay, let's say that another irregular appears. If I order a retreat, what will you do? That is the only order I cannot obey. So his word changes already. No, he's probably saying he will do everything I say except this one thing. Stubborn. Well, stubborn and determined people can turn out useful, but can also be disastrous. I lightly sighed and nodded my head. Fine. Fine? You'll accept my answer even with that one exception? I wasn't going to believe you if you said you would obey my order of retreat anyway. But I do have one condition. Name it. If you ever ignore a command or order from me and do whatever you feel like doing, know that I will not follow you or try and save you like I did last time. If I couldn't control him, I just didn't have to. It was enough to have stopped him from suicide one time. Zhang Sawan nodded his head. Oh yeah. And one more thing. What is it? That sword. Let me try using it once. I tried wielding the sword and swinging it about a few times, but it didn't appear in the item fusion book. That only brought me to one conclusion. I needed to use a weapon on an actual monster for it to appear in the book. Since we had decided to leave the mercenary team, we needed to pick another dungeon to raid. I thought over all the dungeons in my database and chose a select few that would be the best fit for us. The closest dungeon among those was none other than the Bukhansen dungeon. This dungeon was originally known for being popular with the leisure parties. This was because the terrain was plain and open, and it was usually full of fairly easy to defeat monsters such as goblins and orcs. Sunba Opa. Jackpot. Just as I was thinking all of this, there was a special news report. All the ores that came out of dungeons were, by practice, managed by the country. And the news was now reporting that they will be reducing the reservation raid time in a dungeon from 4 hours to 2 hours. This was because since the level 1 dungeons had disappeared, it had directly impacted the already dwindling country's ore supply. They were probably aiming to increase the turnover rate in the dungeons to boost ore gathering. That's not jackpot. Stupid. That's bad. If it's 2 hours, that means our raid time is reduced by half. And if you clear a dungeon in 2 hours, an irregular would appear. And, like what happened last time, it might appear even if we didn't clear the dungeon. This could only mean that clearing a dungeon quickly wasn't the trigger. The actual trigger, more specifically, was the rate at which you went through the dungeon. And if you clear a dungeon in 2 hours, an irregular would appear. In that instant, I just realized another clue to the irregulars from what happened last time. Since the level 4 monster appeared even if one didn't clear the dungeon, that meant that clearing a dungeon quickly wasn't the trigger. The actual trigger, more specifically, was the rate at which you went through the dungeon. Hey, at least they're reducing the admission fees. 30%? Since they're cutting our raid time in half, shouldn't they be cutting our admissions in half too? That is true. But it's better than nothing. I guess I could look on the bright side. Previously, since the dungeons were always so booked in advance that no matter how quickly you reserved a spot, you could only do a raid every 3 days. But with this new change, we would probably be able to go hunting once every 2 days, or maybe even once a day if we got lucky. If none of us get injured, we could potentially earn much more. And they also say that leisure parties will be allowed again. Looks like they're desperate. It hasn't even been 3 months since the last incident. For them to allow leisure parties to resume too quickly was a considerable risk. For the government, known to hate taking on unnecessary responsibility, to burden themselves with this risk, meant that there was considerable pressure from the business community from that lack of minerals and ores. Chapter 42. There were a lot of people gathered in front of the northern mountain dungeon. The crowd was a mix of people ready to climb the mountain and hunters about to enter the dungeon. Carrying the heavy armor and equipment on top of the huge backpack just to get to a bus stop was no easy feat. Do I need to buy a car? I began to think of the van that we had taken to the Beksapyeong dungeons. Maybe I should have just called Cho Younggu to pick me up. Sunba Opa. I could hear Young Soa's loud voice yelling for me. She caught up to me in almost one leap and bowed to try and catch her breath. How can the party head be the last one to get here? Sorry. There was a bit of traffic on the way. But didn't I still get here earlier than the appointed time? I guess. But did you know that Manager Kim was the first one to get here today? Well, it's because I told him to get here by 4. Huh? So then he was actually 30 minutes late? Yeah. But I guess now he'll start catching on that I've been purposely giving him an earlier time than everyone else. You think so? If not, then that's better for me. Let's hurry on up. If we're late, that means the time we get to spend in the dungeon will be that much shorter. Northern Mountain Dungeon, even though it was a level 2, was known to be a relatively easy dungeon to clear. But we still needed to keep our guard up. If our time in the dungeons is reduced to 2 hours, that means we will be forced to clear the dungeon faster, resulting in a higher probability of an irregular appearing. Even though there were 7 of us, since 2 of us in the group were porters, we just needed to pay a smaller extra fee for admissions instead of a full hunter's price. The inside of the dungeon was deathly quiet. The cave's walls were a red color and, unlike limestone caves, were completely dry. Since the dungeon ran in a straight path, there was no way for someone to get lost. After a simple briefing with the team, we went ahead to start our hunt. Because monsters don't usually appear in the passageways, there was no reason for us to be nervous just yet. After walking for about 5 minutes, we came to the first room. Taking into consideration the new reduced raid time, in order for us to clear the entire dungeon, we had to clear each of the 7 rooms in less than 3 minutes. There were 5 small orcs. Looks like a pretty large count for the first batch. Manager Kim did his sleep spell first. As a golden beam began to glow, 2 orcs fell into slumber. After hustling from one raid to the other while working with the mercenary team for a month, it looked like he made some improvements. Mr. Cho Younggu, do you think you can handle it? I'll try. Mr. Cho Younggu. To the right. Mr. Jong Sawan. To the left. Roger. Piping. An arrow flew into the air. Each of us took on an orc from the 3 running toward us in a straight line. Since there was no reason for us to drag on the time, we tried to finish them off as soon as possible. After I parried my opponent's attack twice in a row, it began to try and use brute force. Orcs were known to try and use strength as their main focus when attacking. But, including Soa's buff, my strength was at about 240%. Can I beat it? Wow. There's a reason why orcs were known for their strength. No matter how much strength I put into it, I couldn't overpower it. But fighting wasn't always about strength or power. I suddenly relaxed to catch it off guard and moved to its side. My surprising move had pushed the orc off balance for a quick moment. I couldn't let this opportunity pass by. I stabbed my bloody sword into its carotid artery and sliced across. Plus 200, after confirming that I got my reward points, I went over to where Cho Younggu was fighting his own orc. Cho Younggu was just barely holding on. It had probably been only about 30 seconds since we started our fight. But having been able to stay in the fight for this long was worthy of praise. Ha! I yelled out as I ran toward Cho Younggu's foe. Though it had an arrow stuck in its shoulder and leg, my yell must have surprised it because it threw its hand axe in my direction. I barely dodged the flying weapon and stabbed out with my own longsword. The blade passed right into the orc's body. My level 1 longsword was able to pierce the hide of a level 2 monster. The orc started coughing up blood as it held onto its bleeding side and stepped back. Swing, swing. Another 2 arrows flew and burrowed themselves into the orc's body. Though they weren't fatal attacks, they were enough to cause damage. The orc's defense was definitely lower than most other level 2 monsters. I swung my longsword in the orc's direction and ran right at it. My longsword pieced nearly halfway into the monster. My armor did sustain some damage, but this was nothing. Then Cho Younggu took his own sword and stabbed it into the now immobile orc. Though the orc flopped about from the impact of the stab, it didn't sustain a big wound this time. It looks like even though his sword was the same level as mine, the level of damage also depends on the person making it. I guess I needed to start getting ready for the finale. I grabbed the hilt of my sword and shoved it all the way through this time, and the orc fell to the ground. When Cho Younggu tried to follow my example and go in for the kill, I held him back. Wait a second. What? Why? I still have something I need to use it for. I looked back at the helmet guy. The orc he had been fighting against was also collapsed on the ground with wounds all over. A level 3 weapon is a level 3 for good reason, it seems. The Rubicon sword. Compared to other swords, it had a relatively narrow and long blade. Just a glance at the item made you feel like it would be easy to break in half, but of course this was not true. It had a special option of increasing the wielder's reflex by 50%. All you had to do was use the sword. Mr. Zhang Sawan, can you please let me borrow the sword for a quick moment? You mean right now? Yes. Helmet guy nodded his head and handed over his weapon. The orc began to squirm violently on the ground as it gurgled out. It knew what was coming. The weird sounds coming from its mouth are said to be the orc's language. But no one ever really took the time to study it, so there wasn't anyone who could understand it. I grabbed the hilt of the Rubicon sword and walked slowly to the orc. As soon as I swung, the monster's body cut cleanly in half. The long blade made it easy to cut all the way through. After cutting through the remaining 2 sleeping orcs as well, I returned the sword. As we waited for the monsters to evaporate, I pulled out my item fusion book. Would I be right? Flip. It's really there, huh? Young Soa had snuck up behind me at some point and asked. Just as she pointed out, there was now a small drawing of the Rubicon sword in the book. It required a level 2 sword and a level 1 agility sword. When I calculated the cost of the materials required, it came out to about $400,000. I could come up with that kind of money if I just created a bloody sword and sold it 2 times. I just needed to gather the required ores now. From the 5 orcs we had killed, 3 ores dropped to the ground. 2 of them were monozites and 1 was a basmazite. Boo, there's still a bunch of monsters left. Party head, Han Junsok said as he walked up to me. He was someone that I now knew not to say any unnecessary words. If he said something, that meant it would be pretty important. What is it? Is there really a need for us to waste time like this, waiting for the monsters to evaporate? If we don't need to rest, wouldn't it make sense for us to kill the monsters and keep going? That is true. I nodded my head. The most time-consuming thing in a raid was waiting for the monsters to evaporate. If there were 7 rooms in all, 70 minutes would have been spent just waiting for the items to drop. What if we just kept going and collected the drops as we came back out? Why didn't I think of this? Chapter 43. If we didn't wait for the monsters to evaporate after every kill and just went on to the next room, we would definitely save a lot of time. Items and ores wouldn't disappear unless the dungeon reset itself, so there was no danger of losing anything either. The more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea. Okay then, from now on, unless there is anyone with injuries, we'll be going straight from one room to the next. Manager Kim, please keep track of your spell reset time. We want to make sure that no matter how fast we move, we slow down enough for your spell to work each time. Don't worry. The sleep spell works again after 5 minutes, so there shouldn't be any real issues. That's good. Young Soa started to grab the ores to put into her backpack. The next room had 20 goblins. What the hell? Why are there so many monsters in here? Manager Kim started mumbling. Aren't those goblins level 1 monsters? They look familiar. Young Soa asked. I nodded my head. You're right. From their size and the look of them, they are definitely level 1 goblins. I'm asking because I haven't been in too many level 2 dungeons, but does this happen often? This is a first for me too. It could be that since the level 1 dungeons disappeared, all those monsters ended up in other level dungeons, but in greater than usual numbers. Is that good or bad? It's good, because level 1 monsters drop ores too, and our government is experiencing a shortage right now. I drew my sword. 20 goblins. If even just half of them dropped ores, that would mean we would end up with 10. Not only was this good for our economy, but I needed ores right now. Manager Kim, okay, leave it to me. I'll put to sleep at least 10 of them. When Manager Kim cast his spell, a golden glow arose. 5 of them had fallen asleep. Huh? Well, even that is a good amount. Mr. Cho Younggu, please help with the attack. Soa, yeah? Hold on to this. I threw the longsword I had been holding in my right hand. Huh? Why? You need a weapon to at least defend yourself with. You remember how to use a sword, right? How about you? This one sword is enough for me. I grabbed the bloody sword in my right hand. I could heard Yung Soa mumbling behind me. So damn hot. Oh my god. Stop. I could hear Manager Kim snickering. Shit. I could feel my face turning red. Plus 100. I swiped up at the goblin running toward me and tossed his body over my shoulder. Helmet guy was assisting me to my left and swinging out with his sword too. Young Soa and Cho Younggu were standing behind us, blocking the exit, and Han Junsok and Glasses Girl were shooting arrows out from behind all of us. Ping, ping. 2 of the goblins were struck by an arrow each on their foreheads and fell to the ground. Han Junsok had improved his archery skills, but I was even more surprised by how much Glasses Girl had improved her aim. At that moment, 2 goblins ran to attack me at the same time. One came from above me and the other right in front of me. How dare you? I grabbed the one in front of me by the neck and threw it up into the air. It crashed into the other one coming from above and both fell to the ground. Plus 100, plus 100, what? They died with just that? I never imagined I had gotten this strong. But I could now see just how much I had improved after meeting a level 1 monster again. Damn. Plus 100, with one hit, another goblin crumbled as easily as tofu. Helmet Guy was also killing goblins left and right as if it were the easiest thing. The goblins, with their short reach, were not able to do anything against the long blade of the Rubicon sword. That's a damn good sword. If you need it, I'll give it to you. That's not what I meant. Well, it's as good as mine anyway at this point. What, let's talk later. Well, I was the one who brought it up. But there was no reason for me to explain anything to him, right? I stabbed a goblin through the eye with my bloody sword. It didn't take us even 3 minutes to kill all 20 level 1 goblins. In fact, the not even one goblin made it past us to where Cho Youngu and Soa were standing. Wow, Sunba Oppa, you're amazing. Really, isn't it about time for you to work on fixing that bad habit of complimenting me every few seconds? You're not that kind of a porter anymore. Aw, but I'm being serious right now. Anyway, just hand over the sword. Weren't you gifting this to me? I just let you borrow it in case you might get hurt. PFT. And for a second I felt a flutter of happiness there. Soa handed the sword back to me. I guess if you came right down to it, handing over a sword like this to her wasn't something that was all that difficult. And if I considered the value she brought to the party, it was not a bad trade. But if people start getting something for free, then they start to rely on the giver. Though she was a valuable member of my party, I also didn't want her to rely on me too much. What I needed was a team member, not a follower. Nothing in life is free. If you keep wanting free things, you'll start losing hair. Shush. Manager Kim might hear you. I'm not bald, okay? I just have fine hair. Manager Kim turned a bright red as he mumbled quietly. Let's hurry on to the next room. Is that okay, Mr. Jong Sawan? No problem. He did look a bit tired, but not enough where it would hinder his fighting. We immediately set out for the next room in the dungeon. Then to the next room. And then to the next room. It had taken us about a total of 1 hour and 20 minutes to clear 7 rooms. We did rest a bit in between, but none of us had sustained any injuries. The dungeon remained dark. That meant the dungeon didn't clear, and a regular would be appearing. We had been taking a break when I spoke aloud to my party members. Everyone stay on alert. Looks like we're not done yet. Again? What do you mean again? Helmet Guy asked Manager Kim. The monster you've been waiting for just might appear. Be prepared. No, you mean an irregular? Yes. But we don't know what it is that might appear. I started to move my shoulders up and down to keep it warmed up. If it was like what usually happened, it would appear near the dungeon exit, but you never knew. Since the dungeon was in a straight line, it didn't matter too much where it appeared. Scrap. It was then we heard a scraping sound along the ground somewhere. This was ominous. A thought that this would not be an easy monster popped up in my head. Everyone get ready for battle. Something is heading our way. What's that sound? Cho Youngu covered his ears as he asked. Scrape, scrape, scrappy. This wasn't the sound of a particularly large monster. It sounded more like a monster that was dragging or pushing something along. Glasses Girl started to shiver. This. Shit. We looked to where the sound came from. The sound that, at first, seemed quite a distance away was now getting all the closer. Click, 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 click. This was the sound of many legs tapping along the ground. Just the sound was enough to induce goosebumps along your skin. They were the sound of bugs' legs. I knew then what it was. It was a monster most hunters dreaded meeting. A level 3 monster, the Great Roach. So, it was a giant bug. From the sound of it, it wasn't even just 1 or 2. To think that the irregular this time would be this monster. Shit. All the things I had brought in preparation for an irregular would prove to be of no use this time around. What we needed to go up against these monsters was something flammable to light up, and a lot of it. If we didn't have at least 20 liters of flammable liquid, it was no use. We had no choice but to try and kill them one at a time. Sunba Oppa. What is it? What do you mean? They're bugs. Kya. Don't make girly noises and stand back. Jong Sawan and I moved up to the front. I don't know if the two of us would be able to hold them back, but we needed to at least try. The first great roach finally reared its ugly head. It was probably about 1 meter in length. It had a hard outer shell that was probably as strong as hunter-grade armor, and its attack was based on grabbing a hold of its opponent and biting chunks out of them with its sharp pincer teeth. A regular roach's bite is 5 times stronger than a human's. I didn't want to even imagine the damage this thing could do. So why are they level 3 monsters? Because they never appear alone. Click 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 click. Behind the first roach were about 20 or more clicking their way toward us. Ah, I really hate them. I feel like I'll see them in my nightmares. Chapter 44. Click click click. Ha. I kicked at it hard while trying to suppress my disgust. Its head lifted up to reveal its stomach, its weak point. I pushed my longsword right in and a sticky liquid squirted out. Ah. All over my hands. +10. Even the reward points sucked. So that means I would get enough level 3 reward points from killing 30 of these. In reality, they usually roam around in packs of around 30. I guess that meant about 30 of them in a group was the actual level 3 monster we were going up against. The monster's shell is very hard and sturdy. If you can, try to flip it over. As soon as Helmet Guy swung with his sword, the roach's shell split in half and spewed out more gunk. Wow. That sword is really nice. Do you want it? Just make sure you kill them all. He keeps saying this, and now I can't tell if he's being serious or joking around. Schwing. An arrow hit one of the great roaches and bounced right off. It was Han Junsok. Don't shoot arrows. They won't do anything. Shit. Okay then. His skill and equipment level were both level 1s. There was no way he could do anything to the great roach's tough armor like that. I'm sure just watching isn't easy, but that was the only thing he could do to help at this point. Helmet Guy and I kept at it to keep all them from getting past us. I noticed one guy trying to make it past us by crawling on the ceiling. The top of the dungeon was about 3 meters above us. I hurriedly ran over. And in that moment, one roach squeezed through below me. Aw crap. But I couldn't do anything. If I ran back to try to get that one, it would create an opening for the rest of the roaches. I could hear the click 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 of the crowd of roaches trying to make it past us both. In the brief instant I had jumped to get the roach on the ceiling, I realized there weren't the 20 to 30 some roaches I had initially guessed. It was more like over 100. One went through. I yelled back at Cho Younggu. Compared to usual level 3 monsters, the great roach was not that strong. But it was too much for the rest of the party members to fight. Would they be able to kill the one roach between the 4 of them? We got it. I heard Cho Younggu yell out. What? How? I yelled out as I kicked away a roach trying to bite into my leg. Uni grabbed it and flipped it over. Don't tell him like that. You're ruining my plan of trying to act demure. It looks like we can kill at least 1 or 2. At Han Junsuk's words, I let out a sigh of relief. Soa. Good job. Click 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 click. The horde of great roaches kept pushing. I probably killed at least 20 of them and Helmet Guys probably did the same. But there were still roaches as far as the eye could see. It felt as if their number didn't go down a bit. Damn. Just how many of them are there? Helmet Guy asked. They usually roam around in groups of 30. Considering it's an irregular, I'd say we can safely assume there will be several hundred of them. I'm sorry, I don't think I can make it through all that. I couldn't see his face, but his voice sounded very worn. Since he was terminally ill, there was no way he'd be in peak condition. But if he dropped out now, then that would open the floodgates, and we'd be doomed. There was no way I could block an opening of several meters by myself. But that didn't mean I could force him to keep fighting either. If he was saying something like this in the middle of a fight, that meant he was at his wit's end. At that moment, I got a great idea. Mr. Cho Younggu, yes, please switch off with Mr. Jong Sawan. Okay. Cho Younggu hurriedly ran up behind Helmet Guy. After swinging his sword several times, he switched positions with Cho Younggu and handed off his sword so that he could rest for a bit while Cho Younggu took up the slack. Cho Younggu was able to sustain just as much damage to the roaches with the Rubicon sword. Don't use up all of your energy in the beginning. We still have a lot left. Ha ha, I'm sorry. I just go excited because I was getting bored just watching from the back. The great roaches were persistent, but Cho Younggu and I were just as adamant in holding them back. The bloody sword started turning a yellowish tint. I guess after sucking up their goo, it was changing colors. It was kind of gross to look at, but I could tell its attack power did go up. It was now able to pierce through the great roach's tough shell. Woo. If you're having a hard time, we can switch off again. We can switch off after I fight a little more. Shortly after, Cho Younggu handed the sword back to Helmet Guy. We continued this for 20 minutes. Phew. My arms were now starting to shake. I was almost at my limit too. Are you okay? Helmet Guy asked me. I'm starting to lose strength in my arms, it seems. Why don't you switch off with Mr. Cho Younggu too? Stab. This time the roach's guts splattered into my face. An overwhelming stench filled my nose and I could taste bitterness in my mouth. You don't have to worry about me. But, I just need to put in more effort. What? I could hear the confusion in Helmet Guy's voice. Instead of answering, I just closed my left eye. I had started out with 350 reward points, earned 3,500 before meeting the Great Roaches, and killed 72 of these bastards. 0, 17, 4,570. I was fine. No need to worry. Because the more I was pushed, the more I would improve. The bodies of Great Roaches were now piled up enough to block the passageway. I didn't really check, but I probably killed about 200 of them by myself. And during that time, I increased my endurance 2 times, and was now at about 300%. 0, 19, 30. This was the result of 40 minutes of hell. I had increased my endurance 1 time, and just as I was about to pass out, I upped my endurance 1 more time and used up almost the rest of my reward points. Though I was technically at 300% of my endurance, if I included Soa's buff, I was actually at 360% right now. If I were to enter a marathon right now, I would probably be able to easily win the gold. No, I would probably win even against a horse. Ha, ha. Cho Younggu huffed and puffed as he fell to the ground on his back. Helmet Guy also fell to the ground as he took off his helmet. The 3 of us were covered in sweat, it almost looked like we just came out of the shower. Ah, Han Junsok suddenly let out a sigh. When everyone looked his way, he said, "Partyhead, there's a problem. It's fine as long as you don't say another irregular showed up." That's not it, he pointed to his watch. 2 hours have passed. Ha, we're screwed. So, what happens if we go over our time? Glasses Girl asked. It seemed she didn't know because she didn't have a lot of dungeon experience. We have to pay for the entrance fee for the next party that was not able to enter the dungeon at their appointed time on top of a penalty. It'll come out to about 3 times the entrance fee, about $10,000. Ah, that sucks. Young Soa cringed. But it's fine. We were able to come up on a lot of ores. So we're not out by too much money. And on top of that, I pointed to the dead bodies of the Great Roaches that were leaking yellow fluid. Yuck. I didn't notice while we were fighting, but looking at it now made me queasy. Once they evaporate, I'm sure something will come out. Let's just wait. After about 10 minutes, the bodies had fully evaporated and dropped ores in its place. I had hoped that at least 1 item would drop, but they were all ores. But I wasn't unhappy. No, it was better it turned out this way. Sunba Opa. This. Young Soa pointed to a silver-colored ore that was sparkling on the ground. It was the Blysonite I needed to create a level 2 equipment with the item fusion book. Don't touch it. Duh. I'm a certified porter too, okay? I know. She let out a huff with her nose and pulled out a silver-colored bag. It was a bag used to safely handle radioactive items. It's another Blysonite. There's an Antslite too, and another Blysonite. 3 of them. We hit ore jackpot. Having killed level 3 monsters, especially a whole slew of them, it looked like we lucked out on rare ores. What uncanny timing. In all we came up on 7 Monazites, 6 Bastnazites, 3 Blysonites, and 1 Ansinite. Put the Blysonites and Ansinite into my backpack. We can't sell those. Okay. As we were packing up the ores, we heard a voice coming from somewhere. Shit. Did they all die or something, you think? If they died, the dungeon would have reset. Our reservations got screwed up because of some stupid idiots. We all looked to where the voices were coming from. A party of 6 people could be seen coming in, and they were not holding back on any of the cuss words. Then they stopped midwalk. Huh? Chapter 45. You guys are fine? They looked our way with clear annoyance in their faces. You retards over there. If you guys are done clearing the damn dungeon, shouldn't you get the hell out? What the hell are you going on about? Dumb little shits. Manager Kim started cursing aloud as his face turned a bright shade of red. Then I could see him sneaking a look at me to see if it was okay to say that. If he was going to do that, he should have stayed quiet from the start. This man. Hey old man. You're pretty good at cursing. Are you the boss? You realize you messed up our reservation? What are you going to do about it? The biggest guy in the group took a step forward. From the looks of it, he was a tanker. He had on a no-name level 3 armor, and I couldn't really tell what sword he carried just from looking at the scabbard. But based on everyone else's equipment, everything they carried was at least a level 3. In other words, these guys were not a general party. You could tell if a group was a general party, because you could smell the desperation in wanting to earn as much money as humanly possible on them. That was their main goal. They were not the type of people who would enter a level 2 dungeon with level 3 equipment. Something came up and we lost track of time. We will make sure to pay the penalty, so please step outside. We will follow shortly. Penalty? It's not as if we're going to see any of it, so what does that have to do with us? It's my understanding that you were reimbursed a part of the penalty fee. I explained calmly. It wasn't as if I didn't know they were purposely trying to provoke us to try and get a rise out of us. But this situation was different from the time with Park Jungba. I was now responsible for more people than just myself. The reason why it was easier when I had to just deal with Jungba that time was because if something happened, it would have only resulted in hot water for me. This was different. Whatever happened now would affect the lives of 6 more people besides myself. Whatever. On our way here, we noticed a bunch of dropped items. We'll be taking those. Just know that. Why are you deciding that on your own? Because we feel like it. We lost out on something, so we're recouping our losses. Isn't that right? Tanker guy walked up closer to me. When I gave a frown, he smirked. Look at this guy. He looks like he just might have a temper. Is that the bag you put our ores in? Yeah, but you know what? You even had a level 2 item drop. Q. At those words, everyone's face in our party turned dark. If it was a level 2 item, it was worth at least $200,000 to $300,000. He was saying he would be taking that from right under our noses. That's lucky. If I didn't come in, we wouldn't have picked up on such a thing. Tanker guy gave a big ugly grin. It seemed, even though he was part of a leisure party, that he was in great spirits for being able to come up on a free item like that. It was a fact that people with money were even more greedy for it. What will you do if I said we needed it back? What will I do? Are you asking as if you don't know the answer, you idiot? He pulled out his sword. From the pattern, I could tell it was the Hanshin sword. It had an explosive damage ability as an option. The value was at around $800,000. That meant his equipment and skill was all a level 3. I wonder if I could beat him at my current ability. I needed to be able to win without there being any casualties or serious injuries. Would that be possible? It would certainly not be easy. At least over 20 ores and a level 2 item was on the line. Though it was a shame to throw them away, I recognized that that was the best option. Let's leave. It looks like you understand the situation. Let's go, everyone, I said as I walked to my party. Though they were all unhappy with the situation, they followed my order. They knew why I had decided to do this. I was barely able to contain my anger. But I kept it down. All those years as a porter, I could handle this much. Then Tanker Guy spoke. Oh yay. And leave your equipment too. What did you say? Don't make me say it twice. I said to leave your equipment and buzz off. I was about to kill you guys but decided not to after seeing all your dropped shit, so be thankful I'm leaving you with your lives. Leave your equipment there and live your lowly level 2 lives. Think of it as a gift from me. Look at Junkpul getting started again, KKK. Hey, that guy over there. He has a level 3 sword. We could probably sell it for a good amount. Tanker Guy pointed at Helmet Guy and smiled. Were they planning on doing this from the start? I get it now. What? It's protocol for the dungeon manager to be the one to determine what happens when you go over your time. So I thought it was weird that you guys were the ones to come in. Which means you purposely came in just to lay claim on our items after turning away the dungeon manager. Bastard. You got a good head on your shoulders. So what? That doesn't change shit. Are you going to go out and tell on us? How will anyone knows what happened in here? We could just kill you on the spot and say you guys died while hunting. Tanker Guy said this while tapping lightly on my cheek. I could hear something deep inside me snap. But I remained calm. It was important to stay calm. Kook. Tanker Guy fell to his knees as blood started spilling out from his neck. Right before he died, I pulled out the sword from his scabbard. This was what I had decided. I couldn't say it any other way. I had killed a person. Plus 300 reward points? I'll worry about that later. What the hell? What the hell did that bastard just do? He stabbed Junkpul. That crazy bastard. 4 out of the 5 guys behind Junkpul's now dead body drew their swords. The remaining guy was probably a porter. Mr. Cho Younggu. Yes? Yes. Cho Younggu hurriedly answered me. Protect everyone. Mr. Jong Sawan, feel free to move about as needed. If you don't want to dirty your hands, you can go to the back. Just give me an order, and I will follow it. Helmet Guy pulled free his sword and stepped forward. There was no hesitation. I was starting to like him. Kill them. The level 3 enemies ran toward us. I held the Hanshin sword in my right hand and the bloody sword in my left. Not bad. Sunba Opa. I'll be honest. I dreaded what she might be thinking of me at this moment. Kill those pieces of shit. No mercy. A blinding light began to shine above my head. Kook. I let out a laugh. To think that I would have people on my side even in a situation like this. I was so grateful. The impact of my Hanshin sword against my enemy's armor sent his head flying into the air. Seems he trusted in his level 3 armor too much. Too bad it wasn't enough to save his life. He departed from the world without even being able to let out one final scream. What the hell? Why is this bastard so fast? Shut up and just attack. Only 3 were left. Helmet Guy was fighting 1, and I was fighting against 2. I guess they pegged me as the most dangerous since I was able to kill 2 of them without so much as putting up a fight. Kook. I could hear Zhang Sawan let out a small sigh. He was already at his limit before this. I guess fighting against an opponent with level 3 skill and armor was really pushing it. At that moment, an arrow flew out. The enemy who was ready to strike at Zhang Sawan's leg stepped back in surprise. Level 1 arrow? Level 3 armor? In a fight, none of that mattered. No matter what level armor you had on, if you had any exposed skin and was hit by an arrow, that was it. Mr. Zhang Sawan, we got your back. Thanks to Han Junsok and Glasses Girl's aid, Helmet Guy was able to keep up. Now how would I handle these 2? Chapter 46. I parried away both of my opponent's swords with one strike from the Hanshin sword. After a dozen more of these same strikes, the one holding a broadsword yelled out, Grand Attack. Level 3 skill, Guangpak, Grand Attack. This skill produced an energy destructive enough to destroy a car. But all I needed to do was dodge it. And that was that. I kicked at the ground and jumped toward the ceiling. The attack plowed into the ground I had just been previously. I did feel a bit of pressure against my skin as it passed by, but that was it. Both of my opponent's eyes traveled up to the ceiling where I was, and they struck at me with their swords. They were fast. One of the swords briefly grazed my left arm. Kook. I dropped to the ground and checked my arm to assess the damage. It was much more shallow than I had expected. This was the reward for raising up my defense. Guy wielding the broadsword stood at my left. And the one standing at my right had a longsword and shield. I decided to go after Broadsword Guy first. I ran to the left. Where do you think you're going? Shield Guy saw what I was doing and moved to block me. Swing. Behind the shield, the guy with the broadsword poked out his sword to try and stab me. I grabbed the Hanshin sword with both hands and struck against the broadsword. Though they were both level 3 swords, the one I held was a named item. My strength was now over 300%, not including the buff. Using my strength in addition to the explosive damage option, I easily pushed both of them back with one shove. I felt like my strength was overflowing. Every time I used the Hanshin sword's explosive damage option, it felt like my heart was about to burst. Shit, how is he so damn strong? That bastard's a monster. Both of them finally realized what they were up against. But that didn't mean I would go easy on them at all. I wielded the Hanshin sword and ran at my opponents. I could see the fear filling their eyes. Spare us. Slam. As the Hanshin blade slammed into the shield, there was a small explosion. Just as I evaded one of their blades stabbing at my side, I threw the bloody sword. Plop came a sound just as sword lodged into one guy's forehead. Plus 300, huh? The remaining guy tossed the shield, turned around, and started to run for his life. I felt a little bad for him because I was much faster than him when it came to running. I picked up the shield. Kook. Helmet Guy's fight ended the moment he cut off the head of the enemy who had an arrow poking out from one eye. We had gained the Hanshin sword and a no-named shield. I now understood why they were trying to steal our items. In order for a regular person to attain a level 3 item, they had to spend several years hunting while risking their lives. I was able to attain these level 3 items so easily. What should have taken arduous hunting again and again came into my possession in a matter of a few strokes of my sword. But we were not finished just yet. Helmet Guy brought the remaining porter and dropped him to his knees. Please spare me. He had a black blindfold on. When I had made up my mind to kill those other guys, what had worn on my heart the most was this fellow right here. But he had to die. We couldn't leave any witnesses. But would I be able to extinguish the life of someone who couldn't even defend himself? If it's too hard for you, I can do it in your stead. Helmet Guy walked up to me and said. It was an attractive offer. But I shook my head. Wait a minute, party head. It will be more dangerous if we keep dragging the time. Han Junsok said. He was right. If we didn't hurry up, the dungeon operator would get suspicious and wander in. The moment the dungeon operator stepped in was the moment we lost all ability to hide the evidence of our deed. I just need a quick minute. What on earth? Those people, will you look at them carefully? I pointed at the 5 bodies piled in a heap on the ground. Everyone was avoiding the pile and so did not notice. The dead bodies were starting to evaporate. Tap. An item had dropped. ****. How many years have you been working as a porter? I'm sorry? Oh, 10 years. How long have you been a porter for those bastards? It was my first time. After the leisure parties were just reinstated again, this was the first job that I was able to secure. I swear. Please show me your credentials. Over here. Here. He passed over his credentials with shaky hands. He was definitely a certified porter. His 10 years' experience was the truth as well. Will you please take out a level 2 equipment from the backpack? Ohak. Yes. He dug through the backpack and pulled out an arrow. It was a level 2 arrow, the Stalker. It was an arrow with a tracking spell option that had a cool time as well. Once every minute, no matter which direction it was shot, it could track and hit its target. The price was $350,000. An expensive item. You must never reveal what happened here today. Do you understand? Yes. I understand. He nodded his head so violently it looked like it might just snap off. If you add up the cost of all the ores in that backpack, it should be a value of over $20,000. That's, keep it. What? To a porter, $20,000 was a tremendous amount of money. I was giving it to him in trade for his silence. ****. My first thought was to get rid of all evidence and blame the deaths on the irregular. In order for that to work, I had to get rid of the Hanshin sword and shield. Being in possession of these items would only serve to cause suspicion. Killing the porter would have been necessary too. But when the bodies disappeared, all my worries evaporated with them. Not a shred of evidence was left behind, and all we had to do was argue that the Hanshin sword and shield were ours. Soon enough, the dungeon operators came in to get us. They did question us a bit regarding going over our time, but we weren't suspected of anything. Since they disappeared in the dungeon without a trace to be found, this would probably end up being an unsolved case. But what the hell do you think happened? Han Junsok asked. It's probably the same reason the irregulars appear. Something is changing. To think that an item would appear from killing a person. Han Junsok said with disbelief as he stared at the item I was holding in my hand. It was a run-of-the-mill pair of glasses. I put it on. I could see a green number floating in the air. As I examined each party member, I could see their individual skill level and proficiency above their heads. Oh, this is pretty damn good. In order for someone to be able to see other people's skill level, they had to use up their only skill lot. But this, just in case, I closed my left eye. I wondered what would happen if I checked for my stats while I had these glasses on. As soon as I did this, the numbers in front of my closed eyelid shattered and then began to gather together into a pile in the middle to reform as a sentence. Would you like to reboot the manual? What's wrong? I guess I didn't look okay because Han Junsok asked in a worried tone. It's nothing. Would you like to try it on? Han Junsok put on the glasses and nodded his head. So you can find out other people's skills with these glasses. How fun. Hey, I want to see too. They passed the glasses around from one person to the other, starting from Cho Younggu. There was an atmosphere of wonder coming from everyone. So, I guess I needed to do what I needed to do. We were able to acquire 2 items from the dungeon this time. An arrow and these glasses. I plan to put them up for auction. Since there are 2 people here who use a bow, please name the price you are willing to pay. Me will buy it for $100,000. Hey, too cheap. You should at least say $300,000 at the least. If we sell it outside, we can get it for $350,000. Cho Younggu started to grunt. That's all I have. Jerk. I won't bid. To be honest, I don't have the money. Glasses Girl said. I nodded my head and said to the other members. There is one person who has bid for the stalker at $100,000. Is there anyone else who is against this bid? If there was anyone who did not accept this price, we would place this item up for sale at the hunter market. Well, it doesn't matter much to me. It's not like I need the money that bad. Young Soa said. Helmet Guy had no interest in money from the start. Cho Younggu was definitely not of a mind to keep his friend from getting stronger, and the same was for Glasses Girl. Manager Kim did grumble a bit, but he didn't say anything. Everyone felt it. If they didn't all get stronger, the next time something like this happened, it might be them who evaporated instead. Okay, good. I will then say my piece. I am against it. Wow. I didn't see you like that kind of person, but you kind of suck. Cho Younggu said with a smirk. Since the ruling was based on majority, my opinion held no water. I just felt like saying it anyway. Why not? Chapter 47. With a vote of 5 people for and 1 person against, we have determined that the stalker will be purchased by Mr. Han Junsok for the price of $100,000. Yes, Han Junsok, whose face had been void of emotion until just a moment ago, was all smiles. Young Soa then said, but why did you vote against it? Because of the next item we will auction out. Young Soa looked at me with a puzzled expression. The next item, silver glasses, will be up for auction. Since this wasn't something even for sale at the hunter market, we didn't really have an official name for it. There was no one laying claim to it. I spoke. I'll put out an initial bid of $120,000. Phew, that's a lot of money. Young Soa said with wide eyes. I guess I needed to do some explaining. Though it is a common skill for people to find out an opponent's skill and level, being able to do so without using up a skill slot makes this a great item. I would say that it would be worth purchasing this item even if I were to spend every dime I had. Is that right? Young Soa held her chin as she went into deep thought. Even with my explanation, there wasn't one person who made a higher bid. $120,000 is a steal, people. If this item were to go up for sale on the market, we would be able to sell it for $300,000 at the very least. Since it is also pretty much one of a kind, it might sell for even more than that. I explained it like this, but my plan was to keep this for myself. The manual that these glasses referred to was bothering me, but, most of all, being able to know another person's skill level would be amazing. I was pretending that I didn't want it as a reverse psychology tactic. I'm against it. Me too. As soon as Young Soa said she was against it, Glasses Girl immediately followed suit. These girls. Why are you foiling my plan? Sunba Opa. You realize your face just turned to stone just now? Shut up. I'll vote against it too. Han Junsok said as he nodded his head. Cho Younggu stared at the three in surprise until Han Junsok tapped him with his hip. With that, Cho Younggu responded as if he were doing it reluctantly. I am against it as well. I'm against it too. With Manager Kim's answer, the vote was unanimous. This wasn't what I wanted. But I couldn't backpedal now and say that I'll give them $300,000 so that I can keep this instead of selling it at the market. Due to, a unanimous decision, it has been determined that. Before we move on to that, these glasses, they were dropped from a dead person. Who would actually buy this? Young Soa said haughtily. The hunter's market most likely will not buy an item of unknown origin. Further, we can't know what level this item is, nor can anyone be certain it is safe to use. Sure, that was my thought too. That this wasn't something we could sell. It would be a problem even if the market did accept it. If we sell something like this, we could get some serious bad luck. I'm not just saying this. We need to keep it to remind us of what we did. Manager Kim said. It somehow made this whole conversation seem legitimate hearing Manager Kim say those words with such a serious face. Then, I'll hold on to these glasses. Just for now. In the future, if the need arises, we can then decide on whether we auction the item or sell it at the market. I agree with Sunbahopa's decision. I too think Party Head's decision is the correct one. Honestly, I don't really care. Cho Younggu responded with a yawn. A laugh tinkled in the air. I'm not an idiot. It's not as if I didn't know what was going on. Everyone had noticed I wanted this for myself, so they were all playing along to help me keep it without it seeming awkward. This is nice. I didn't put the Hanshin sword nor the shield up for auction. Reason? Because they weren't dropped items. They were items we had gained from killing people. Though there wasn't a procedure on what should be done in this kind of a situation, we were all in agreement that an auction was not what should happen. It was also clear that selling it was not an option either. Keeping two good items was a much better value than trading it for money. The items that I could now make using the item fusion book was one bloody sword. Now that I had the Blysonite, I thought it was a good time to try my hand at putting the item fusion book to use. But there was something I had to do first. Sunba Opa, I covered Soa, who was asleep and rubbing her face on her pillow, with a blanket. Her shifting shirt kept revealing what I had no business looking at, so I needed to cover her up. It had now become a bad habit of hers to sleep over at my place. I should make some bean sprout soup. But I couldn't really say anything because again I was the one that had to be piggybacked home after a hard night of drinking with the members. I had low tolerance. I was a drunken mess from just one bottle of soju. It was a relief that I was a well-behaved drunk at least. Boil. While the beansprout stew was boiling on the stove, I took out the silver glasses from my backpack. From the look of it, though it did look a bit on the elegant side, it still just looked like regular glasses. And there was no problem wearing it since it didn't have prescription lenses. I put it on. Now my face looked like it belonged more in a library than a dungeon. I didn't really lilt that. Because if you look weak, people tend to want to start trouble. I stared at the sleeping Soa with the glasses on. Skill type. Friendship. Can grant self and up to 5 allies 20% increase in ability. Additional ability. Super Friendship. can give just one person 50% increase in ability. Cool time of 1 day after use. Proficiency. 16 ***** super friendship. The one person buff's name was that, it seems. To think that it can give information the skill's owner didn't even know. But I didn't put this on to check for this. I closed my left eye. Would you like to reboot the manual? That same message popped up again. What am I supposed to do now? There wasn't like a button or any other indicator so that I can say yes or no. Yes. User acceptance received. Manual is booting. A shower of green numbers, English letters, Korean words, and a mix of other special characters began to jumble together. It felt like the Matrix. Then finally the rain of characters formed a square box. It felt like I was staring at an arcane computer interface I might have seen in a museum one time. Manual booting complete. Thank you for using Delta V0.1. Before starting, please read the tutorial. All menu options are accessible via word prompt. Tutorial. As soon as I said that word, a whole slew of texts began to appear. The contents generally looked like what you would find in a manual. What caught my eye was a section on skill types and their relationships. Skill window. The active skill is effort. The stats for this skill are as follows: Strength 200, Endurance 300, Reflexes 150, Focus 150, Defense 150. Oh, I was super impressed. This meant I didn't have to keep track of everything anymore. All I had to do was put these glasses on, close my left eye, and reboot or turn on the manual. There was a plus button next to each of the abilities. This was an extremely intuitive interface. This meant that I didn't have to beat myself up in the area I wanted to raise anymore. All I had to do was press that button to invest my reward points, right? So does that mean these glasses are a cheat since I technically wouldn't have to put in the effort of pushing myself to the limit anymore? Sunba, the soup is overflowing? Soa said as she rubbed the sleep from her eyes. Ah. I ran to the stove and turned it off. Half of it seemed to have evaporated. More flavor, I guess? Chapter 48. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the food. Since I had to put in more water and boil it again, the taste wasn't as good, but it was fine. While I was doing the dishes, Young Soa finished up in the shower and came out saying, "Those glasses look good on you. You look like a professor." I'll take it as a compliment. I took them off and put them into my shirt's front pocket. Even though it looked fragile, I'm sure it wouldn't break easily since it was an item. Oh yeah. What does your schedule look today? I thought I would just hang out here all day. I even brought some snacks on the way. Kind of sucks that you don't have a TV though. Aren't you going to go home? So mean. And you were so friendly last night too. I sprayed water at her face. Kya, stop playing around. I remember everything okay? I know that as soon as we got home, we both fell right to sleep. Chet, anyway, why? I thought of going to the market later in the afternoon. If you don't have any other plans, I was wondering if you might come with me. Surely, this isn't a sneaky way of asking me out on a date? Just go home. I'll come back in an hour. I just need to change. After sending her home, I went back to check the manual again. I pretty much got the gist of how to use it. One of its features was that you could store the user's skill and item into a virtual space. To test my theory, I took out the item fusion book. A message immediately appeared. Would you like to store the item fusion book? I wanted to see if verbal as well as gesture prompts were viable input methods. I nodded my head this time. As the book disappeared, a text with the title, Fusion, appeared. Fusion. As soon as I said this, a list of all the fusion combinations appeared. I chose the bloody sword. Due to missing items, we are unable to move forward with the fusion. So we can do the fusion this way too. I wanted to check on a different item next. Just for testing purposes, I took out Park Jungda's longsword. Instead of nodding, I made a verbal prompt. Store. As soon as I spoke my verbal input, the longsword disappeared and another text appeared. Then when I tried to grab at the text, as if by magic, the longsword appeared back in my hand. I could get used to this. I went ahead and stored every single item I had. When I tried to store the Hanshin sword last, an error message appeared. Item storage is full. Please upgrade to store more. Upgrade? I checked the tutorial again. There was now a new area with upgrade information. It looked like this manual only gave information on a need-to-know basis. Upgrade is eligible with fulfillment of the correct amount of ores. Upgrade to the next version requires 100 ores in total. Type of ore does not matter. The cheapest ore is $1,000. That meant upgrading would cost a minimum of $100,000. This meant that all the ores I get from all our hunts would need to be invested into this upgrade. But if I did that, I would be taking away from the party's shares. I needed to find a different way to compensate them. This wasn't entirely impossible. I could just pay them directly from my own pockets. Luckily, I now had the ability to fuse items and earn extra money that way. Location: Hunter Market in the Shinshin area. It was just about lunchtime, so there were quite a few people wandering about. Young Soa came up to me and poked me in the side. Did you see? See what? That person leering at me just now. You're imagining it. There have been at least 20 men staring at me with lustful eyes on my way here, okay? Come on. It's about time you admit it, no? Young Soa said with her arms stretched wide as if she were putting herself on grand display. It wasn't that it wasn't true. She was indeed drawing looks from people. At a height of over 170 centimeters tall, the outfit she had on were actually complementing her usually broad shoulders. True to her athletic roots, she was well-toned everywhere and had really done wonders with makeup today. But why are you still wearing those glasses? Why? Is it weird? She slipped her arm into mine. You want to die? Since you have two, it should be fine loaning one out to me. Is my arm some kind of object? But, squeeze. Okay, fine. I'll let it be, so stop squeezing. You're cutting off my circulation. Hee. What is this manipulation? The Hunter Market was only about 10 stories high, but it could probably compete with the biggest of department stores. They probably make about $3 billion a month, but, since this was not including all their online sale, they probably make several times more than that. Plus, if you took into account their earnings from outside countries, I can't even imagine that kind of money. The representative of this Goliath was that very Li Weisung. You know, the man who found the very first skill book ever? Not only was he a world-renowned hunter, but he was the elite of the elites, a man with power, money, and fame. Even more amazing, this man did not age. His wife was still as beautiful as ever too. It was probably due to a skill book, but that has never been confirmed. Welcome to Hunter Market. We were greeted by female personnel dressed in clean-cut suits. Name. Skill type. Charm, 1. Ability to draw the target's attention. Additional option. Group management. Ability to draw attention of a group of people. Proficiency. 79 ****. This was what I saw above the head of one personnel. I was slightly surprised. Even though this was a level 1 skill, it was surprising that a regular civilian had a skill. Male. Most of the patrons here were male. There were a lot of hunters, but there were also a lot of civilians as well. To cater to this group, there were a lot of replica equipment, accessories, bags, cardigans, and more. They were even selling goods with famous hunters' depictions, tactical videos, and books by famous hunters as well. This item was once owned by Team Escatas's tanker, Zhang Haianxiang, until just 5 years ago. It is known for its sleek scales which change colors depending on the angle. Due to its artistic value, this item is very sought after. You could hear this explanation coming from a female, who looked to be a curator, holding a mic. She was extremely beautiful, but I could see a skill above her head as well. It was a level 1, ideal beauty, skill. Basically, it had the ability to slightly change the skillholder's face to reflect the viewer's ideal form of beauty. That was a super expensive skill. If my memory serves correctly, it had market price of over $1 million. When I briefly scanned everyone around me, I could see that almost every employee had a skill in their possession. In the case of the guards, their skills started at least a level 3. Seeing that there were several hundred guards posted all around the market, they could probably hold back an entire army. It's a scary place. I was able to recognize anew just what an amazing place the Hunter Market was. If they were able to invest so much into their lower-level employees, then just how much was management making? Click. What are you doing? It's just a commemorative photo. I'm going to post it on SNS. Quote. I shook my head as I headed to my goal destination. The first floor was mostly comprised of shops set up for civilians. The real stuff was sold in the basement level. When we arrived at basement level 3, we came upon a scene lined with shops as far as the eye could see. Most of the items for sale were level 1s with some level 2 items scattered here and there. It's a lot quieter here. It used to be packed back in the day. It seemed that sales were slow for level 1 and level 2 weapons ever since all the level 1 dungeons had disappeared. And among the few who were here, it looked like their objective was to sell rather than to buy. The 2 daggers I needed to use in fusing for a bloody sword were priced at $50,000 and $55,000 each. For something that had once sold for about $130,000, I had expected to pay at least $60,000 per. It looked like times were dire. After making my purchases, we headed on over to a cafe on the ground floor. There were some people here too, but we were able to snag a booth. Once we sat in our booth, I took out the 2 daggers I had purchased for $105,000. One was a glossy red color while the other was a plain silver white. I then took the oars out from my bag and immediately tried my hand at the fusion. Bloody sword. Fuse. As soon as I made the command, the 2 weapons and 3 oars began to meld into one right before my eyes. It didn't even take 10 seconds in all. Young Soa, who had been watching silently the entire time, blinked a few times before saying, "Holy cow. So it really works?" The only reason the process had been so smooth and easy was due to the manual. Are we done with everything now? Well, all that's left is to sell this. Then that means starting now, the 2 of us are. Party head. I looked up to see Cho Younggu and Han Jusok waving at us at the cafe entrance. Young Soa looked at me with a mix of annoyance and surprise. Sunba Opa. I called them. There were things we needed to talk about. The rest of the crew will be here too. Can I cry a bit right now? Chapter 49. I get the feeling we're interrupting something, Han Junsok said with an awkward face as he sat next to Young Soa. Soon after, Manager Kim and Glasses Girl arrived together. Then finally, Helmet Guy came too. Dressed in a suit, he seemed to be drawing glances from people. You couldn't really say that he was conventionally handsome, but his good physique and large scar across his face made him look impressive and manly. As soon as everyone arrived and settled down, I got straight to the point. The reason for my asking everyone to come out here today is to discuss our next raid. Can't you just plan everything like you've been doing so far? To be honest, you are the most experienced and informed out of all of us. Manager Kim said. He was right. I had loads of info up in my head, and I knew just how I needed to use it. And I also knew if I continued to push forward as the lead, no one would have a problem with that. What I wanted to discuss today was more on how we should balance out the party. So that was it. Han Junsok responded. He was a sharp one. What does that mean? At Cho Younggu's question, Han Junsok responded, he's saying that nobody else is able to keep up with his ability. We're basically just holding on to his ankles every raid. Then, Cho Younggu looked in my direction with wavering eyes. If I were to thin out the herd, the first to be chopped are Cho Younggu and Glasses Girl. Everyone knew this. They were both still level 1s. Gulp. But I didn't want to just chop them here and now. We had shared some difficult battles together. There were plenty of strong people in the world, but there weren't too many people you could trust. If they were willing to stick with me, I had every intention of helping to bring out their strengths so that they can grow and keep up. This wasn't an entirely unselfish act on my part. If I could keep fusing items like this and arming my party members with said items, that would allow them to stay while also strengthening the entire team. Human resources are the biggest asset. What you cannot do yourself is made all the easier with help from others. I have made my decision. First, Mr. Cho Younggu. Yes. Party head. He yelled out. You don't have to answer so loudly. What I wanted to discuss was the level 3 no-name shield that we obtained recently. You're not saying you'll loan it to me? I nodded my head. A level 3 no-name shield is currently priced at $500,000. I was thinking of loaning it to you for $5,000 per use. What do you think? That sounds fine. This is not something for you to decide so quickly. Borrowing it for $5,000 could result in a loss for you. I decided to be a hunter because I wanted to be a hunter. Not so that I can earn a lot of money. If I can just join you on raids, then I do not see how I can possibly call it a loss no matter the outcome. Understood. This was a shield I had no use for anyway. You could say this was a mutually beneficial agreement. I looked at Glasses Girl next. She was pretty much an extra. And in reality, rarely gave the team any true value. And for Glasses Girl, I'm sorry. I need money. I could see her wringing the hands she had atop her lap. She was carrying the financial burden of an entire family on her shoulders. I held the future of all those people in my hands. Then please tell us what value you bring to this party. If you cannot convince everyone here, I cannot justify keeping you on board. I'll work hard. I'll do my very best. That's not enough, but the only thing I can do is my best. I can only put in my best effort. No, I believe that you have a talent. I'm sorry? I planned on keeping Glasses Girl. And I did have good reason for it. At least a good enough reason to convince everyone else to keep her on the team. I looked to everyone and said, Yeongkyung has a tremendous skill when it comes to archery. Tremendous skill? Everyone looked stumped. Her skill was in her rapid-fire shooting abilities. If she could just raise the level of her bow and skill, then her accuracy and destructive power will undoubtedly rise as well. But there was no item or skill that could make a person a faster shot. This was because being able to reload a bow and shoot quickly could only be earned through hard work and training. You can be a bad shot. That can be aided by the right skill. It's fine if you are lacking in attack power. The right weapon will do that for you. But rapid fire loading is not something that can be improved by way of a skill or equipment. You can only load a bow quickly and accurately enough to shoot with practice. But I don't have the money to. I will loan you equipment at a price you can afford. But on one condition. What condition? An exclusive contract. Exclusive contract? Yay. That means you cannot hunt with any other party. And if we set a date for a raid, you will be obligated to drop all other engagements. Is that it? This is an investment I am making for what I expect from you in the future. Thank you, Sunba Opa. Thanks. Young Soa was wiping away tears. This is why you can't take girls anywhere. Sniff. Cho Younggu seemed to be tearing up too. Guess we had one more girl. Oh, and Mr. Han Junsok. I'm fine. Thank you. He had invested $100,000 to purchase the Stalker arrow. I was prepared for him to feel a certain way from my giving such a generous deal to a party member who was also an archer. I was thankful to him for saying those 2 words. We went over the issue with the oars quickly enough. We decided that I would just pay them extra via the contribution split instead of going through the process of selling the oars and then doing the split. After we finished discussion all of this, I felt more at peace. It felt like I had pushed off a heavy rock that had been resting on my chest. Young Soa spoke. Sunba Opa, you're a good person. Don't try to butter me up for anything. I don't have money. Oh, I'll butter you up. PFTTT. Cho Younggu spit out the coffee he had been drinking. ******, we decided to choose a different dungeon for the next raid. This was because there was a high chance the same irregular that appeared before would appear again. Something we learned from our experience with the cave wolf. So we settled on the Beksapyeong dungeon. It was a dungeon we were familiar with, and I also wanted to give Helmet Guy an opportunity to fight with his irregular. I made this decision based on my assessment that our team now possessed enough ability to be able to take care of the level 4 monster. But, as usual, a problem arose. Though we had arrived right on time, we were told that our entrance was denied. Why is that? The party before you has not yet come out. It seems they may have run into a problem. By problem you mean? Though the thought of an irregular came to mind, there was also a strong enough correlation that no matter how fast a party cleared a dungeon, an irregular usually did not appear if I was not in the team. This was what has happened up to now, so I was fairly confident this was how it would continue. It was probably some other reason. The most common monster to appear at the Beksapyeong dungeon was the lizardman. Then the armored anteater. But since their fighting styles, strengths, and weaknesses were all known factors, they weren't too hard to fight. We don't know anything as of yet. Our dungeon operating team has gone inside to investigate. Didn't it already pass 10 minutes? It feels like they're a little late in coming back. Young Soa said. What the heck have you been doing this whole time? This dungeon is a flat sand terrain, so it is pretty expansive. Just looking for the target party would probably take 30 minutes minimum. Then we shouldn't be standing around like this. Every available body should go in to find them. But we don't know exactly what happened inside. If we incur more victims. The dungeon operator spoke. More victims? I asked. Is there something you know that you're not sharing? That is, do you know about Team Ezekiel? Chapter 50. Team Ezekiel was the name of a group of hunters who have been clearing dungeons extremely quickly as of late. Their initial tactics were moving in small groups, but very recently, like the mercenary team, they had formed a larger group with a lot of level 1 hunters to quickly clear dungeons. The problem with this was that there would be a high mortality rate among the level 1 hunters. Which was expected, since they were performing high-pressure raids. From the words of the survivors, we hear it isn't intentional, but the mortality rates were just so high that we needed to start an investigation. What is your definition of high mortality rates? The death percentage is about 10%, what the hell? That's basically a suicide mission, not a hunt. Every one of my party members was muttering with shock and awe. But not in the good way. General parties usually had a mortality rate of 2 to 3%, and that was considered high. Compared to that though, 10% was just too much. If 1 out of 10 hunters died on every hunt, who in their right mind would even go? The problem was that the current situation was making people take on that kind of risk. Because hunters with only level 1 equipment would be unable to join a hunt otherwise. I mean, the equipment that used to sell for 100,000 is now only selling for 50,000, and who knew when that would drop to 30,000? Times were tough. Unlike the mercenary team where the party head organized all the attacks to promote the safest approach, the Ezekiel team were known to recklessly hunt with abandon for the sake of faster clearing times, and the level 1 hunters with no choice but to try and keep up. So do you believe that even now they are probably fighting recklessly against a monster and are behind, held back because of that? That is what we think, yes. Slam. In that instant, a person came out of the dungeon. The man who looked to be a dungeon operator took one step and immediately collapsed to the ground. He was covered in blood. Medic. Doctors rushed to the scene and started to perform healing. Luckily they were on standby, otherwise it might have meant one more body count. What the hell happened? What is going on in there? The dungeon operator was yelling at the injured worker on the ground. As he began to heal a bit, he answered with a burdened voice, "Kook." The monsters were running around all over the dungeon instead of being isolated in their usual locations. The questioning operator's face became like stone. Monsters usually remain in a designated area. But this is if you don't provoke them. I thought back on the cave wolf boss. If you did provoke a monster though, they were insistent beasts. They won't stop. So they started something they couldn't keep a lid on. The dungeon operator let out a sigh. I could guess at what probably happened. The hunting time had been halved since a few days ago. The Ezekiel team, who usually hunted with reckless speed to start with, probably messed with all the monsters at once to try and speed up the hunt even more. And this most likely ended biting them in the ass. There was a high chance that over half the team was dead by now. When are the senior hunters due to arrive? I asked. We were told that there is no one in the neighborhood. It will be a minimum of an hour. Since we are in a secluded area, it can't be helped. Then a lot more people will probably die in that time. It's out of our hands. In this kind of situation, what would you say to us going in? Impossible. It will be too dangerous. You will not know when and where a monster could pop out and attack. But it's better than just sitting around and doing nothing while people are dying. That is true, but the dungeon operator seemed to be lost in thought. As a civil servant, he was probably conflicted between whether he should do the legally sound thing or the humane thing. People who died inside the dungeon were not his responsibility. But if we went inside even though he knew it was dangerous and we got hurt, he could very well be held responsible. Okay. It seemed he decided to trust his heart. He nodded his head to allow us in. The inside of the dungeon was very quiet. From what the injured operator had told us, since the monsters would not be where they should, we had to constantly stay on alert. Can I ask why you insisted on doing this? Han Junsok questioned me. I answered. No admission fees, and we can hunt with no time limit. Then we're not here to try and save people's lives. How are we supposed to find these people? Seeing as how we haven't even run into one person yet, they're either hiding as if their lives depended on it, or they're all dead. That is true. Young Soa nodded in all seriousness as if my words were so very wise. If I really wanted to rescue people, then all we have to do is kill all the monsters in here. Then the people still alive will be safe to leave. Now, everyone please get ready to fight. As soon as I made a grabbing gesture toward the Hanshin sword in my item list, I was able to grasp the dirt-colored sword. I then summoned my armor right before retrieving the no-name level 3 shield for Cho Younggu. Please remember to return this upon leaving the dungeon. Of course. Cho Younggu lightly punched the shield. The first monsters we faced were lizardmen. They could usually be found in groups of 3 to 4. Now, I don't know what those idiots did, but we were now facing 9 of these bastards at once. Manager Kim cast his sleep spell and immediately put 2 to sleep. That meant 7 more to go. He did his part. I made a thumbs-up sign to the man before I rushed into the crowd of monsters. Zhang Sawan and Cho Younggu remained close behind me. Let's start with this one. Slam. Plus 200. Immediately after, 2 of the fallen monsters' comrades swung their harpoons in vengeance. I pushed out with my sword to parry both weapons right before I kicked hard at their exposed bodies. Both monsters scurried in retreat. But Cho Younggu was waiting on the right and Zhang Sawan was waiting on their left. We were able to corral 6 of these guys together into a small enough group where they were now bumping into one another. I raised my hand. An arrow flew out to lodge into one lizardman's eye. This was the stalker at work. Even from over 20 meters away, it was able to hit a moving target. A few more arrows shot out after that, but they were unable to cause any further damage. Cornered on 3 sides, the only place these lizards could move was back. But instead of running away, they struck their harpoons out towards Zhang Sawan, who had the weakest defense. Out of the 6, 3 had run towards Zhang Sawan, 1 towards Cho Younggu, and 2 in my direction. These monsters weren't total idiots. It looked like they did use their heads a bit. It was too bad that was the extent of their genius. I threw the bloody sword. The sword flew in the air and lodged itself into the thigh of one lizardman that had been running at Zhang Sawan. I was aiming for its neck, so my aim was very off. But whatever. I got it. Schwing. A harpoon swiped at my chest. To me, they were just moving way too slow. I batted away the next swipe with my hand and shoved my Hanshin sword right into the monster. The perfect attack. There was no need for me to even activate the explosive damage option. Blood began to dribble out of its mouth. +200, slam. +200, after easily disposing of my two monsters, I headed over to Zhang Sawan to help him. The battle ended without any real change in the momentum we started out with. It had taken us about 3 minutes to take care of all the lizardmen. Reward points for this battle equals 1400. Of the 2 remaining lizardmen still asleep, I slit the throat of one while I used the stalker to kill the other. This was so that I could put it in my item fusion book. As we waited for the monsters to evaporate, I checked my book to see what was required to make the stalker. A level 1 tracking arrow and a level 1 eagle's eye. The eagle's eye came in the form of a monocle and helped to boost the wearer's accuracy in archery by 10%. This type of accessory is still in high demand and probably sells for $100,000. I pulled up the manual to check my stats. Skill type. Effort, 0. Skill has the ability to use reward points to increase physical abilities. Extra skill, option. None proficiency, 19 reward points, 2,330 abilities, strength 200, endurance 300, reflexes 150, focus 150, defense 150. Since the reward points would keep rolling in, there was no point in saving them. What should I raise next? After a brief moment of thought, I pointed at reflexes. I figured this would probably be the most helpful in our immediate battles. Right? Homebrew Audiobooks hopes you enjoyed this program. Stay tuned for future chapters.